Chapter 1168. Rishiri gritted her teeth and glared at Wu Chen. That unshakable and calm face was especially dazzling in her eyes. Rishiri was so angry that she trembled and desperately clenched her teeth to stabilize her body. Your willpower is truly astonishing. His calm eyes widened a little, revealing a hint of surprise. Nishihara was sweating profusely as she stood up. Her eyes were red as she held her zanpakuto and stared at Dustless's handsome face. You want to kill me in one move? Dream on. Nishihara was gasping for breath. Even though she was on the verge of death, she was still holding on. Although I deliberately suppress my eye power, she can still stand up. She is indeed not bad. She can be the leader. Wu Chen nodded secretly and looked at the persevering Rishiri in surprise. Is that so? That's still not enough. Dustless shook his head and continued. If I send you to be the captain of the 3rd Division, I'm afraid it won't be long before the 3rd Division is removed from Soul Society, Hishihari-san. Why? Hinamori blinked and asked curiously. Even if Sosuke Aizen wants to attack Soul Society, the head captain will stop him. No, you misunderstood me. Sosuke Aizen is an external factor. I'm talking about internal factors. Dustless shook his head mysteriously. Then what do you mean by internal factors? Hirako Shinko asked. You don't know? Dustless said with a look of disdain. Of course it's Hishihari-san. She's the biggest internal factor. If the 3rd Division is handed over to her, it will collapse. If Sosuke Aizen wants to destroy the 3rd Division, he'll need to send someone to do it. Hishihari-san won't even need to lift a finger to destroy the 3rd Division. Wu Chen said seriously. His tone was unusually solemn. Hinamori, Hirako Masako, and Lisa couldn't help but laugh out loud, and their necks were all red. Nishihara's personality wasn't suitable to be a captain. I'm going to kill you, you bastard. The angry Ri-Nishi descended from the sky with zanpakuto, and the sharp edge slashed towards Wu Chen's head. Ri-Nishi was in a fit of anger, and the condensed power was enough to split Wu Chen into two. There are a lot of naughty and disobedient kids these days. Wu Chen had a headache and frowned. This ape persimmon was obviously a problematic child in this world. Clang. Hinamori raised her eyebrows as she pulled out her zanpakuto and stood in front of Dustless. The zanpakuto clashed against each other. Hinamori was obviously not as strong as Ri, and she was forced to retreat again and again. She was obviously not Ri's opponent. Head captain? Just as Hinamori was about to fall, a pair of hands steadied her body. After a short moment of absent-mindedness, Hinamori turned around and saw Dustless. You're so despicable, abusing your position as the captain. I heard that when you just became the captain, you found 3 beautiful team members to join the first team. No, it should be your personal guards. Rishiri exposed Wu Chen's past without hesitation. I don't have a vice-captain in the 1st Division, so it's easy to find former members. Looking at your sour face, are you jealous? Dustless pursed his lips and smiled, teasing Nishihara. You have a sharp tongue. I'm going to beat you up. His face was red. He was no match for Hinamori, so he had no choice but to move past Hinamori and slash his zanpakuto towards Wu Chen's throat. The blade of the zanpakuto flashed with a cold light, as if it had not tasted blood for many years. Clang. Just as she was about to cut off Dustless's throat, she raised her left arm and grabbed the zanpakuto. His skin was as hard as steel, and Nishihara couldn't hurt Dustless at all. Stop it, Nishihara. Hirako Shinko shouted with an irresistible command. After all, he was the leader of the masquerade army. If you're lucky, kid. She couldn't take advantage of him, so she could only take advantage of him with her mouth. She couldn't beat him, and she couldn't even scold him. Her whole body was boiling, and she was about to explode. In that case, this matter ends here. At the same time, in another direction of Hueco-Mundo, Sosuke Aizen gathered a large number of troops. Looking around, the entire Hueco-Mundo was densely packed. Hundreds of large black caverns were opened, and countless grand voids came out from them. Aizen-sama, isn't it too early to attack the modern world? Inside Virtual Night Temple, Ise-sensei looked at Aizen Sosuke, who had closed his eyes and was silent. He was quite worried. Although Hueco-Mundo had a slight advantage, It was gone after Dustless became the head captain. And now they were facing a great crisis. I just ordered them to destroy the modern world, to create a favorable environment for Wang Jian. We're not at war with Soul Society, so there's no need to worry. Sosuke Aizen looked at Higashihara, then closed his eyes again. At this moment, he had completely integrated the Hogyoku into his body. Feeling the boundless power, Sosuke Aizen was so excited that his lips trembled. His eyes were shining as if he could see the future when he stepped on Dustless's corpse and ascended to the throne. Sosuke Aizen wasn't worried about this operation. He only sent a large number of Jillians to invade the modern world to prepare for Wang Jian. It didn't matter even if the entire army died. After all, they were just pawns. It didn't matter if they died. Chapter 1169. Sosuke Aizen launched a large-scale attack. It was impossible to ignore him. Gathering countless Jillians to attack the main world had already surpassed the level of petty theft. This was a serious provocation, so Soul Society naturally had to respond. What if their captains stop us? Ise-sensei asked worriedly. No matter how powerful the Jillians were, they weren't captains. Don't worry, those Jillians are just sacrificial pawns. It's fine if they can complete the mission, but if they can't, then so be it. Plus, those captains will be in big trouble, especially head captain Dustless. Sosuke Aizen laughed coldly. His hoarse voice was like the hiss of a poisonous snake, making people shudder. First Division's captain's meeting. Wu Chen opened his eyes calmly and looked at the team leaders who were standing in 2 rows. He nodded with satisfaction. He was the only one sitting in the entire First Division. These former colleagues could only stand. He felt particularly comfortable. Due to the addition of several new captains, the entire Godai 13 had a new look. Sosuke Aizen sent a large number of Jillians to invade the modern world. He definitely doesn't have good intentions. Shunsuke Aizen said seriously. No one in Hueco Mundo had this ability other than Sosuke Aizen, who could mobilize thousands of Jillians. We must send someone to stop him. Yukitake Jushiro followed. Yes. The captains responded to Shunsuke Aizen's call and nodded. Shinozaki Ichigo can't hold on in the modern world. It's difficult for him to fight thousands of Jillians alone. The newly appointed Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant said. She then suggested to Dustless, Head Captain, we should immediately send someone to support him. Hearing this, Dustless raised his eyebrows. He was still counting on Sosuke Aizen to create Wang Jian. When the time comes, he can use this opportunity to invade Soul King Palace and devour the Soul King. Now that Sosuke Aizen finally made his move, Dustless naturally couldn't stop him. Of course, we must protect the dignity of Soul Society. Dustless slapped the table and looked at Toshiro Hyphen. Captain Hyphen and Captain Nakamura will work together with Shinozaki Ichigo to wipe out the Jillians. Captain Kue, Captain Zaraki, and Captain Nia will hide in Hueco Mundo and cut off the connection between Hueco Mundo and the modern world. Yes, Head Captain. The efficiency of Soul Society was extremely fast. As soon as the captain meeting ended, a steady stream of captains and Shinigami poured into Hueco Mundo. Nishiya Higashishiro and Katsumura Zuasian were on their way to Kazucho. Without the captains and Grim Reaper, Soul Society became much quieter. Dustless was also helpless. He couldn't just ignore Sosuke Aizen, so he made a small fuss. In fact, he wanted Sosuke Aizen to create Wang Jian as soon as possible. I hope you two are killed. Be killed. Looking at the disappearing silhouettes of Rifen Valley's Toshiro and Zuozhun, Wu Chen pleaded. Usually, these two were the most talkative and dissatisfied with his opinions. Now that they were dead, it was best. At this moment, in the first team's house, Captain Tianbei. Looking at the person in front of him, it was the captain of the 3rd Division, Tianbei embroidered assistant. This man had bronze-black skin and looked very strong. He had a gentle and modest smile on his face. But Wu Chen caught the hostility that sometimes floated and sometimes dormant in his eyes. Although his face was very gentle, it was just an appearance. Inside, he was a decisive person. Head Captain. Tianbei embroidered assistant said respectfully. What's the matter? Wu Chen sat down and asked faintly. This, Tianbei embroidered assistant made an embarrassed expression and immediately approached Dustless and said, I want to join. Suddenly he paused. Then he roared with killing intent. Sir Head Captain, in fact, what I want to say is please die. Then Tianbei embroidered assistant's expression was very fierce, and a cold light shot out from his waist. Because he was too close, he didn't even have time to react and directly pierced Dustless's head. Poochie. In an instant his head fell to the ground. The head that fell to the ground was still in a daze, as if it hadn't realized what had happened. TSK, you are indeed a useless vase. You are the head captain at such a young age. There is no one else in Soul Society. Tianbei embroidered assistant saw that Dustless was instantly killed, and said in an extremely bored tone, It's really boring. I thought I could have some fun, but who knew that this head captain is so weak? Tianbei embroidered assistant sighed, and said with great disappointment. Then he turned and left. I said, a low murmur spread out and said, I said that Aizen Sosuke hates the Grim Reaper very much. How could he let you come back? If I'm not wrong, you should have joined forces with him, right? No, I shouldn't say that you joined forces because that kind of ambitious person is extremely conceited. He will only treat everyone as a chess piece. You are not worthy of being his partner. Tianbei embroidered assistant trembled all over and instantly turned his head. A chopped-off head can talk. Looking at Dustless, who fell to the ground and opened his mouth to speak, Tianbei embroidered assistant felt that his brain wasn't enough. She fell into a rare dead-end situation. Looking at you, it seems that you don't even know my ability. It seems that you are indeed Aizen Sosuke's chess piece. Aizen Sosuke clearly knows that I have the ability to be immune to physical attacks. He just sent you to die, idiot. Chapter 1170. The Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant's face darkened. She looked like she was about to bleed. She stared at the head on the ground, and her eyes were bloodshot. You, how on earth did you do it? The Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant asked in shock as she rolled her eyes. At this moment, Dustless's head had been separated from his body, but his head was still talking. Moreover, the most ridiculous thing was that Dustless's body, which had been beheaded, seemed to be fine. He was still standing on the spot, safe and sound. This is very simple. You just have to look at me from a different angle. Look at me as if you are looking at the death god. Sooner or later, you will be so shocked that you will go crazy. The head gradually weathered and turned into thousands of photons, which reconnected Dustless's body. When she saw such an unbelievable scene, the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant's mouth widened. Her jaw was almost dislocated. Don't look at you as if you are the death god. When she heard this, the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant sneered. She was shocked by Dustless's arrogance. She sneered and mocked. Are you saying that I should look at you as if you are a god and treat you as a god through and through? The Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant's face was full of disdain. Even if he wanted to joke, there should be a limit. Isn't that so? What's wrong with that? Don't you think that this way, everything becomes reasonable? Dustless was not angry. He asked calmly, because you look at me as if I am an ordinary person, you will die a horrible death. A horrible death. Dustless was afraid that the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant would not understand what he meant. Don't be arrogant. The Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth. She stared at Dustless's cold face and realized that she was speechless. What Dustless said was the truth. There was no need to say anything. If she looked at him as if he was a god, everything would be reasonable. Because he was a god, he could not be killed. Even if his head was cut off, he could reattach it. Because he was a god, he had unlimited power. He had the power to collapse the sky and the earth with a flick of his finger. Because he was a god, he had unlimited spiritual pressure. Because he was a god, she quietly stared at Dustless, who was approaching her. She was so angry that she gritted her teeth. Sosuke Aizen, I won't let you go even if I become a ghost. The Heavenly Shell embroiderer gnashed his teeth and roared. He wanted nothing more than to tear Aizen Sosuke to shreds. It was because he had listened to Aizen Sosuke's slanderous words that he had fallen to such a state. He had been completely oblivious to the fact that he had set a trap for himself. Even though he had buried himself, The Heavenly Shell embroidery assistant still had not discovered it. No, I can't give up. There's still a chance of winning. Stealing his heart, the Heavenly Shell embroidered helper chose to resist with all his might. He still had his own dreams. How could he die so hastily in a place like this? His eyes focused, and an enormous amount of spiritual pressure and lightning gathered in his right hand. Tao Breaker 88. Flying Dragon strikes the thief. Sky blue beams of light shot out, blotting out the sky and covering the earth. The void within 1,000 feet was dimmed, and the buildings of the First Division were forcibly demolished, turning into rubble. The light of a firefly. He calmly sized up the incoming light. It was several dozen feet wide, and the destructive fluctuations caused him to involuntarily retreat. His heart was filled with despair and haze. In front of this unstoppable light, it was as if everything was made of paper. The slightest touch would cause it to turn into ashes. The 88 Tao Breaker that I use with all my strength is extremely powerful. It's enough to instantly injure a division leader. Even if you take it, I think. Boom! 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 A huge boom resounded through the sky. The white clouds in the sky were blown away and evaporated. The power was indeed strong. However, the strange thing was that the 88 Tao Breaker, which should have exploded on the ground, suddenly flew up into the sky. Bastard! How is this possible? What kind of joke is this? He sent my Tao Breaker flying with his bare hands. The Heavenly Shell embroidered helper suppressed his saliva and exclaimed in shock. His tone was several times louder. Dustless had actually sent his Tao Breaker flying with an exaggerated wave of his hand. How could he not be shocked? To be honest, I've never taken your level seriously. Even if it's Aizen Sosuke, I've always treated him as a nobody. Dustless said casually and calmly. Different realms meant different things. Perhaps the Heavenly Shell embroidered helper was shocked and in disbelief, but Dustless was not happy at all. On the contrary, he was rather disappointed. With this move, he saw through the Heavenly Shell embroidered helper's strength. He was also an opponent who was not strong enough but liked to be arrogant. In an instant, he lost his only interest. What exactly are you shocked about? Seeing the shock on the Heavenly Shell embroidered helper's face, Dustless said calmly, "The boring game ends here. Compared to this kind of boring battle, I prefer to go to the 4th Division and have a pleasant after-dinner activity with Ray." The vast spiritual pressure that had been hibernating surged, and the violent airwaves caused the earth to tremble. Suddenly, the Heavenly Shell embroidered helper felt that the surroundings were abnormally hot. He muttered to himself absent-mindedly, "Such a big formation, could it be the legendary 96 Tao Breaker, cremation with one sword?" 96 Tao Breaker? Are you talking about cremation with one sword? No, it's not worth using that to deal with you. A small character like you can be dealt with in an instant with a 90 Tao Breaker. Dustless pointed at the Heavenly Shell embroidered helper as he spoke with unusual seriousness. Countless cold black lights appeared slowly and swarmed toward the Heavenly Shell embroidered helper from all directions. Tao Breaker 90. Black Coffin. As soon as he finished speaking, it was as if he was playing the soul-calming song of the apocalypse. The world before the Heavenly Shell embroidered helper's eyes turned black. He vaguely saw the evil spirits of the underworld waving at him. Then he suddenly felt an incomparable stabbing pain. Countless black lights pierced through the Heavenly Shell embroidered helper's body, shattering it completely. His flesh and blood flew everywhere as he was brutally dismembered. Even without singing, the power was beyond imagination. It was several times stronger than Aizen Sosuke's full singing. Chapter 1171. His overwhelming strength could be said to be invincible. Even the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant and his pride were crushed together. His body was covered with hideous bloody wounds, and his crushed bones were exposed to the air. White liquid seeped out from the crushed bones, and the air was filled with a thick smell of blood. This pungent smell made one feel uncomfortable just by smelling it. He seems to be completely dead. Glancing at the corpse of the Heavenly Shell embroidered assistant, Dustless turned around and left. His footsteps were very light. After being crushed and obliterated by number 90 Tao Breaker, It was very difficult to survive. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, a sharp whistling sound came from behind, and Dustless, who realized the danger, turned sideways. Poochie. Even though his speed was very fast, one of Dustless's arms was mercilessly cut off by the blade wind. You're not dead. Staring at the unscathed heavenly shell-embroidered assistant, Dustless wondered in his heart. This guy was clearly torn apart by the black coffin, but now he has come back to life. The spiritual pressure in his body seems to have increased several times. After looking at the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant for a long time, Dustless came to a shocking conclusion. His spiritual pressure had been absorbed. Bastard, I was too careless. I forgot that this guy seems to be able to absorb the enemy's spiritual pressure and transform it for his own use. I'm afraid that the spiritual pressure I just released from the black coffin was all absorbed by this guy, so his spiritual pressure has become stronger. The Yao Yao blade can absorb the enemy's spiritual pressure. Feeling the surging spiritual pressure in his body, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant was very confident. He didn't expect Dustless's spiritual pressure to be so terrifying. Just a casual Dao breaker consumed spiritual pressure comparable to that of a captain-level Shinigami. This was also one of the reasons why Dustless's Kido was so powerful. Under the endless infusion of spiritual pressure, any move would undergo a tremendous change. The power of the number 90 Dao breaker black coffin was the same. Now our identities seem to have changed. I have changed from the prey to the hunter. With a smile on his face, he immediately slashed at Dustless with his Zanpakuto. Especially after seeing the arm that fell on the ground, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's confidence soared. If a person lost an arm, his combat power would inevitably be greatly reduced. Idiot, you came at the right time. Do you think you can win like this? You're still going to die, idiot. Dustless's mouth was full of mockery. He did not care about something like an arm. He could grow another one at any time, and it would not affect him at all. Thinking that victory was within his grasp was just the wishful thinking of the heavenly shell embroidery. The severed arm emitted a faint luster, overflowing with a milky white mysterious liquid. It looked quite mysterious. It was just a short gap of a breath, and a brand new arm grew out. This unimaginable speed caused the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant to jump in fright, but she still decisively gritted her teeth and charged explosively towards Dustless. Since he couldn't escape the fate of death even if he tried to escape, then he would rather die in battle. Swish. Swish. The long saber swept over, aiming for the vitals. It was specially chosen to sweep at tricky spots. When the attack was vicious, an ordinary person's head would probably be directly chopped off. The swordsmanship was unprecedentedly tricky, and there was no way to dodge it. Bring it on. Seeing that there was no chance for him to escape, Dustless simply gave up on the idea of temporarily taking shelter. He said in an extremely provocative manner, "You're just a lackey. Dog Rock is your true home. I was blind to have made you the captain. How hateful. You're courting death." Hearing this, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant trembled with anger. Her rough and weather-beaten old face turned green. After Dustless's interference, the perfect swordsmanship was instantly full of flaws. Her entire body was full of holes. Once a person's mind was in a mess, they would definitely be distracted. At the same time, it also meant that this person was about to walk into the abyss of the netherworld. After all, not everyone was carved from the same mold as Dustless, who had countless life-saving methods and the ability to regenerate without limit. The small foot that carried a flash of absolute heavy blow rose from the ground. Due to the terrifying temperature of the light, it directly melted the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's skin. Ah, it hurts. Bastard. The miserable cries and howls made one tremble with fear. Those heart-wrenching screams made it seem as if she regretted living in this world, and wished she was dead. Light speed kick. The merciless light revealed itself on the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's chest and blasted him back mercilessly. After an explosion, he disappeared in the blink of an eye. Boom boom boom. The huge tremors attracted the attention of the Soul Society's captains. They looked at the blazing fireballs in the void in disbelief, and rushed over without stopping to rest. It was one thing for the head captain to fly into a rage, But he could not drag his own people into this. That kind of indiscriminate attack would either kill or injure those who came into contact with it. Everyone understood the heavenly shell embroidered assistant's pain. Sometimes, living was definitely more painful than dying. If I can kill an idiot like you once, I can kill you twice, 3 times, 4 times. I can even kill you 1,000 times. Dustless spoke softly. His casual tone was filled with indifference and confidence. He had never taken an insignificant person like the heavenly shell embroidered assistant seriously. A grain of sand would always be sand. It was impossible for it to evolve just because of a momentary dazzle. This was unrealistic and impossible. Colorful divine rainbows bloomed in unison in the void. They all had the same destination, which was where Wu Chun was. After all, he was now the leader of Soul Society and the personally appointed head captain of Team Zero. He had the absolute right to speak. Chapter 1172. At the same time, there was a huge change in another direction. The entire city was turned into ruins. Damn it! Why are there so many of them? We don't have enough manpower. The humans in the modern realm are about to be wiped out by the Great Voids. We need to ask for reinforcements from Soul Society. Otherwise, the entire human race will be wiped out by the hateful Jillian sooner or later. Kongzucho, Kurosaki Ichigo, Higashiya Toshiro, and Sakumura Seizen were standing close to each other. They were surrounded by countless Great Voids. Jillian was rushing towards them in the dark. The Shinigami brought by Sa-jin and Higashi were almost completely wiped out. They all screamed unwillingly, and finally fell powerlessly in the burning ruins of the city. In the war, the first to be unlucky were the ordinary people at the bottom. I've already sent a message to Soul Society before. Most of the Killian have appeared. Why are only the 2 of you here? The number of Shinigami you brought is also very average. We are now being besieged. Kurosaki Ichigo shouted loudly. His tone was hysterical. This is the arrangement of the head captain. Higashiya Toshiro's green eyes flashed with a touch of gloominess, and immediately comforted Kurosaki Ichigo and Sajin. Soul Society's reinforcements may be close at hand. We just need to hold on for a while. These words were naturally to fool Kurosaki Ichigo and Sajin. Dustless deliberately did this to create a favorable time for Aizen to create Wang Jian. Then he can go to Soul King Palace to devour the Soul King. We can only hold on for now. Kurosaki Ichigo could only sigh in frustration. Now that things have reached this point, they could only wait for the reinforcements. Although he knew he might be fooled, Kurosaki Ichigo chose to wait. The hope was slim, but it was better than nothing. At least it gave him the motivation to hold on. Kakaka. It was also at this moment that a huge hole suddenly appeared in the void, and a group of Great Voids that were clearly different from Jillian walked out. They were all wearing white uniforms, and it was clear that they all came from the same force. That is, Higashi Shiro and Sakumura Sakura raised their heads and looked over. After recognizing who it was, their expressions changed drastically. They were shocked to find that these people were all Ajuchas. In the past, they could still fight against Ajuchas. However, they had all been tricked by Dustless. Whether or not they could survive was a problem. It was also at this moment that a burst of light suddenly appeared in the depths of the sky. The reinforcements they had been waiting for had finally arrived. However, the person who walked out of the realm gate caused them to be directly petrified. This person wore heavy makeup and a dazzling golden hair ornament on her forehead. Her exquisite and translucent face was absolutely beautiful, as if she was deliberately carved by the heavens. That bastard has only been the head captain for a few days, and he's already made such a big mess. Looking at the pitiful Kongzucho below, the graceful beauty complained in dissatisfaction. She waved her hand lightly, and the Great Void Realm experts that were surrounding Shinozaki Ichigo and the others collapsed one after another. They turned into a group of dregs and disappeared with the wind. The woman with the hair ornament on her head, and an enchanting yet cold appearance was not ordinary. She was one of the members of the Zero Squad, Shoutoro Senjumaru. The Zero Squad existed in the Spirit King Palace. Originally, this kind of instigation was left to the Godii 13. However, the commotion this time was too big, so the Zero Squad had no choice but to step in. Where's Dustless? Landing gracefully on the ground, Shoutoro Senjumaru looked at the three of them and asked suspiciously, "Did that guy send you guys here?" Higashishiro and Sakumura Sakura looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Due to the appearance of the Zero Squad in Quiet Soul Society last time, the two of them also knew about the existence of this special organization. The Shinigami that we brought were all annihilated. The number of Jillian is as many as snow. Captain Sakumura and I are the captains. As for Shinozaki Ichigo, sigh. Higashishiro was young and tender, but his tone was very mature and experienced. Hearing this, Shoutoro Senjumaru's eyes lit up. He grasped the important part and asked, "In other words, that guy Dustless ordered the two of you to come and reinforce the modern world?" "Yes." Sajin and Higashiya Toshiro answered honestly, telling the truth of the matter to Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru without missing a single detail. Aha! The Greater Voids who heard the news roared. Although these Jillian had no will and intelligence, their strength was still not bad. Only the vice-captain level Shinigami could be relied on to fight against them. Mirance, how dare you be so arrogant? Shoutoro Senjumaru turned his head and said coldly. His whole body was filled with cold murderous intent. Looking at the tragic situation in the modern world, his murderous intent increased. With a wave of his hand, countless needles that looked like sewing appeared. Pay with your lives for the Shinigami that died in battle, and the humans in the modern world. As he spoke, the Jillian that came attacking were easily crushed by Shoutoro Senjumaru. It was as easy as blowing dust. It was not worth mentioning. In fact, it was indeed so. In the eyes of the Zero Squad, even the vice-captain level Shinigami were not enough, let alone these insignificant Jillian. They were just there to fill the gaps between their teeth. Chapter 1173. Inside the Soul Society, the sky was clear and cloudless. Damn it. Why is it like this? How can such a young captain be so strong? Damn it. The intelligence said that he has only been a Shinigami for a few decades. The heavenly shell embroidered assistant's Zanpakuto was inserted into the ground. She endured the stinging pain all over her body and supported her body. She stared at Dustless, who was coming towards her with difficulty. With every step he took, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant's heart was one step closer to the abyss. He smelled a special will from Dustless. This guy was just using me to pass time. He never cared about me at all. The heavenly shell embroidered assistant's face turned green. In the end, she came to this shocking conclusion. Even though the strength that Dustless had displayed now definitely surpassed that of the dimension where the death god was, there was an inexplicable voice in her heart that told the heavenly shell embroidered assistant that this was definitely not his full strength. When he mentioned Dustless, Sosuke Aizen showed a complicated expression. It was complicated with unwillingness, mixed with fear, hatred, and admiration. Obviously, Sosuke Aizen knew that he was not as good as Dustless, not just in terms of strength, but in all aspects. What should I do? Seeing Dustless's figure gradually approaching, the heavenly shell embroiderer's imagination ran wild. He thought about countermeasures. It seemed that a strong resistance would only be ruthlessly crushed and eliminated. Dustless would mercilessly sweep him into the trash heap of history. Ah, are you going to give up? Dustless, who was good at observing people, laughed. There was a trace of pity in his words. I haven't played enough yet, and you're going to die. Facing an absolute existence like you, anyone would give up. Futile resistance is futile. It's better to give up and lose with dignity. The heavenly shell embroiderer admitted frankly. He knew that the other party had the strength to destroy the world, and he knew that he was no match for him, but he still insisted on challenging him. In the heavenly shell embroiderer's eyes, he was an idiot. How about cooperating once? Looking at Dustless, the heavenly shell embroiderer restrained his killing intent and suggested very kindly. He couldn't beat him, and he couldn't run away. In this case, he could only lower himself and beg for mercy. Cooperation? Do you have the capital to cooperate with me? Dustless neither agreed nor refused. Instead, he directly said, putting aside the factor of strength, do you think you have any information that would interest me? Hearing this, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant froze, and large beads of sweat dripped from her forehead. I have. Opening his mouth, he was shocked to find that he didn't have a bargaining chip that could move Dustless. Not to mention bait, he didn't even have the qualifications to move Dustless. He had no right to negotiate at all. Sir Head Captain. The people from Soul Society, who had rushed over, glared at the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant with indignation. They could not help but curse. You despicable villain. The head captain is indebted to you. He gave you a heavy responsibility and handed the 3rd Division to you. Is this how you repay his kindness? How shameless. Shiomu Rukia's delicate little face surged with anger. She unsheathed her Zanpakuto, and in anger, she slashed straight at the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant. Seeing this, Dustless frowned and ordered, Lucia, stop for me. You're not his match. Hee hee. Seeing this, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's eyes glowed with green light, and a touch of coldness and cunning flashed in her eyes. This was an opportunity. Clang clang clang. Waving her Zanpakuto catch Rukia's series of awe-inspiring attacks, her left arm emitted a small scale of Ryatsu, and at the same time, she waved her Zanpakuto to force Rukia back. Binding path number 61 6-rod light prison. 6 huge light belts swept over and easily bound Rukia. Seeing this, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant hurriedly stepped forward and blocked Rukia's throat with her Zanpakuto. Idiot, you are too arrogant. With your strength, you are still far from being able to resist a captain-level Grim Reaper. Smacking her lips, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's face was full of disdain and contempt. She shouted loudly, Get out of my way, or I will immediately kill this Grim Reaper called Rukia. Let her go before I get angry. Dustless's tone had obviously changed. It was a little hoarse, a little indifferent, and even more violent and boiling with killing intent. Let her go? Hearing this, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant glanced at Rukia and shook her head decisively, saying, She is now the guarantee of my life. If I let her go, I will definitely die. You think you won't die if you don't let her go? Let her go if you know what's good for you, and I can leave your corpse intact. Otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences. Dustless said coldly, his eyes already glowing red. Is that so? Hearing this, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant remained unmoved. Her indifferent tone left no room for negotiation. Get out of my way, or I will immediately kill this little girl. Don't test my bottom line. A person who is forced into a desperate situation can do anything. The heavenly shell-embroidered assistant gritted her teeth and warned. Her Zanpakuto was already close to Rukia, and there were obvious bloodstains on Rukia's neck. Heavenly hand power. The discussion was fruitless. Dustless directly activated the ability of Rinnegan, and his body suddenly disappeared. Such an exaggerated scene made everyone's eyes widen. Where did he go? Seeing Dustless suddenly and strangely disappear, the nervous heavenly shell-embroidered assistant muttered to herself in amazement. At the same time, she looked left and right, looking for traces of Dustless. His other hand quietly grasped Shiomu Rukia's beautiful hair. After all, this was his current life-saving trump card. Behind you, idiot. As his voice fell, the wind from the blade passed through the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's body and directly cut her in half. Even because of the excessive blood and speed, the heavenly shell-embroidered assistant's heart was still beating. Chapter 1174. The power of the heavenly hand came and went without a trace. It belonged to the space series of ninjutsu. The tragic death of the heavenly shell embroiderer was inevitable. After all, the strength of both sides was there. Burying you in the ground will pollute the land, so it's better for you to vanish. Staring coldly at the heavenly shell embroiderer, who was split into two, Dustless's palm overflowed with pink light and covered his body. A burning smell spread. Hado 54 Flame Destruction. As his voice fell, the disk of flame shot out from his hand. In a flash, it approached the heavenly shell embroiderer's body and burned his body into ashes. Boom boom boom. There was an explosion. He thought that the heavenly shell embroiderer's body would be burned into ashes. Who would have thought that this guy would come back to life again? No wonder you became Aizen Sosuke's subordinate for no reason. You also accepted the power of the Hogyoku. No wonder it's so difficult to kill. Dustless was relieved. Following his gaze, the heavenly shell embroiderer was strangely healing. There's no other way. If possible, I don't want to have anything to do with a filthy creature like the void. This is completely prepared to deal with you. It's very useful. If it weren't for the power of the Hogyoku, I would have been killed by you. The heavenly shell embroiderer spat out blood as he spoke with difficulty. White liquid spurted out from his face and then slowly shrank, turning into a mask that belonged to the void. Is that so? The power of the Hogyoku is indeed powerful. Dustless nodded in agreement. As the host of the Hogyoku, he knew best. But then he changed the topic and smiled eerily. The Hogyoku has consciousness, but I erased it later. The consciousness in the Hogyoku now is actually disguised by me. Hearing this, the heavenly shell embroiderer was stunned. His expression changed and he asked anxiously, "What did you say?" The person who instigated Aizen Sosuke to kill the head captain, is me. I'm afraid that idiot Aizen Sosuke will never know that the person who took the head captain's Ryujin Jaka is actually me. Close to the heavenly shell embroiderer, Dustless said in a tone that only the two of them could hear. In other words, the power in my body right now is yours? The heavenly shell embroidered assistant was stunned for a moment before she asked with a trembling voice in disbelief. You're smart. I know your every move like the back of my hand. Dustless admitted with a chuckle. This was an indisputable fact. Soon after, he sneered. You have my power in your body, yet you still dare to point your sword at me. Do you know how terrifying that is? Aha! A miserable scream suddenly came out of the heavenly shell embroidery assistant's mouth. Immediately after, his body swelled up, and countless blood vessels spread out from all parts of his body. The spiritual pressure in his body started to go berserk. You will explode from my spiritual pressure. Dustless spoke in a hoarse voice as his eyes shot out red light. Every word he said seemed to be filled with supreme command and control. The heavenly shell embroidered assistant's body started to swell. You think I gave the Hogyoku to Sosuke Aizen? Don't be naive. Those who have received the power of the Hogyoku indirectly have my spiritual pressure in their bodies. Don't forget that the original owner of the Hogyoku is me. One day, when I feel that they are useless, all of you will die. In fact, the power of the Hogyoku is an out-and-out trap. This is also what I designed by imitating Yawacha's Holy Spirit. Dustless muttered to himself. At the same time, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant's face was full of unwillingness. He locked his gaze on Dustless and wished he could drag him into hell with him. He had been unhindered for a lifetime, but he was blown up by someone else's power. How ironic. Bang bang bang. In the end, the heavenly shell embroidered assistant could not withstand the power of the Hogyoku. His body, which had swelled up like a balloon, exploded and turned into a boundless blood mist. There was no corpse left. A rain of blood floated in the sky. It's finally over. A faint golden luster floated out of his body and pushed the blood away. Dustless left safely with his hands in front of him. The heavenly shell embroidered assistant had completely become history. Inside the 1st Division's team house. What? It was suppressed. Dustless looked at Matsumoto Ranjiku in shock. He snatched the information in her hand and read it carefully. After a while, his brows were tightly knitted together. That group of 0 Division likes to meddle in other people's business? The information in Dustless's hand was about the situation in the modern world. It was obtained from the 12th Division. The Great Void in Kongzucho had been suppressed by the Shiradora Thousand Hands Maru and Sajin. It was as good as new. I was counting on Aizen Sosuke to create a Wang Jian for me to invade the Soul King Palace. Now it seems unrealistic. Dustless's expression darkened. If it was not for the fact that Aizen Sosuke was still useful, he would have rushed to Hueco Mundo to kill him. He thought that Aizen Sosuke would be able to create a Wang Jian in a few days. Who would have thought that the Shiradora Thousand Hands Maru would come out of nowhere and destroy his plan? Isn't this a good thing? The Great Void has been wiped out. The Grim Reaper has won. Matsumoto Ranjiku puffed up her breasts and expressed her confusion. Women with big breasts have no brains. This sentence is really true. Dustless sighed in his heart. He lazily lay on the couch and gently closed his eyes. He was secretly thinking of countermeasures. Suddenly, he realized that he had no way to break into the Soul King Palace. Since soft methods won't work, I can only use hard methods. A dazzling cold light flashed in Dustless's eyes. Suddenly, the delicate figure of Shiradora Thousand Hands Maru appeared in his mind. The Zero Division's bodies were all made of Soul King's power. He could only start with her. It was good that Shiradora Thousand Hands Maru was tactful. Dustless did not want to fight her. If she resisted, he could only use brute force to suppress her. Chapter 1175. With the addition of Team Zero, the turmoil in the modern world was stopped. Dustless's plan to use Sosuke Aizen to create Wang Jian also collapsed. There were only two ways to enter the Spirit King Palace. One was to follow Team Zero, and the other was to use Wang Jian. Other than that, Dustless couldn't think of any other strategy. In the First Division's building, looking at the picturesque scenery of Soul Society in the distance, Dustless muttered alone. Team Zero's body is constructed by the power of the Spirit King. In this world, only they can enter and leave the Spirit King Palace at will. Others can't even find a trace of them, let alone invade the Spirit King Palace. Dustless sighed. He was now facing such an awkward situation. Originally, he was counting on Sosuke Aizen, but who would have thought that Shiro Senjumaru would crush Dustless's idea? Whoosh whoosh whoosh. In the deserted First Division's building, a faint ripple splashed in the air. Dustless turned his head and saw a young woman standing elegantly and gracefully in the First Division's building. The elegant and extraordinarily beautiful young woman was slender and elegant. Her pink thin lips revealed a deep red sandalwood mouth. She said, "My respected captain, Kazucho was destroyed. Don't you think you should do something?" Senjumaru. Taking a deep look at Shitoro Thousand Hand Maru, Wuchen handed over a cup of hot tea, which he rarely did. Staring at her delicate jade face, there was a lot of expectation in his eyes. You have something to say?" Being stared at by Dustless, Shiro Senjumaru's face blushed. Being stared at by a man, she felt uncomfortable. An indescribable flame was rising rapidly. "What do you think of me?" Dustless changed the topic and asked inexplicably, "Your impression?" Stunned by this sudden question, Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru even forgot about his purpose of coming here. He tilted his head and pondered for a long time. His feelings toward Dustless were rather contradictory and complicated. In short, it was a love and hate relationship. In the past, she was tricked by Dustless and was inexplicably seen naked by him. Naturally, Shidoro Shimaru was furious. Other than that, Dustless had temporarily surrendered to the Grim Reaper. This was something that made her happy. "You're full of evil tricks. Of course I hate you." "Really?" Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with a touch of strange color. His Sharingan bloomed with a strange afterglow as he focused his sight on Shidoro's body. "What do you want?" Seeing this, Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru sensed danger. He looked at Wuchen cautiously and warned, "This is Soul Society. Don't forget that you still have a meritorious service to atone for your crimes. In addition, Squad Zero has placed many dangerous seals on you. If you dare to act rashly, I can do it at any time. Divine might." Not waiting for Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru to finish speaking, a giant whirlpool swallowed her up, including Dustless. In the mysterious space, there was a dead silence. There was not the slightest life. "What is this place? Genjutsu?" Waves surged in his eyes that were as calm as autumn water, and Shoutoro Thousand Hand Maru was on full alert. "This is the space of divine might, and it is also my private space." A faint voice came. Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru subconsciously looked at the source. It was Dustless. "Private space? Your ability?" Hearing this, Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru's pretty face was slightly silent. She stared at Dustless unkindly. "You have countless abilities. So far, you have shown dozens of abilities." "So many?" Dustless's frozen face loosened and said in surprise, "Did Squad Zero count my abilities?" I'm honored, but all of this is not important. This is my space. If you want to get out of here, there are only 2 ways. 2. No, it should be 3. Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru sneered. If I kill you, it should be one of the ways. If you think you can kill me, you can try. Looking at Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru, the calm Dustless didn't care. If she could kill him, she would have done it long ago. You bastard. Hearing this, Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru's pretty face turned cold. When she was about to make her move, Dustless's voice stopped her invincible attack. I can let you out, but you have to bring me to Spirit King Palace immediately, Dustless said softly. I will replace Spirit King and become the supreme leader of Shinigami. Then you might as well kill me. Without thinking, Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru directly rejected Dustless's condition. Then there is only one condition left. Looking deeply at Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru, Dustless said bluntly, then you will completely become my person. Only in this way can I guarantee that you won't betray me after I let you out. You dirty and shameless villain. Don't forget that you are the head captain. Pointing at Dustless angrily, Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru's face turned ashen. She knew the meaning of Dustless's words. What did he mean by completely becoming Dustless's person? It meant that she had to give him everything, including her heart. The difference between a smart person and an idiot is self-awareness. If you think you are my opponent, you can give it a try. But I can tell you for sure that once you choose to make a move, I will definitely use force to take everything from you without any hesitation. Don't blame me for being cold. You can only blame yourself for sticking to the rules. Moreover, it will be better for you to become my person than now. Dustless had an expression of, I'm thinking for your sake. Obviously, he was saying that it was her fortune to have taken a fancy to her. Chapter 1176. Shiro Thousand Hand Maru was sweating profusely as she stared at Dustless, who was close to her. She didn't doubt his means at all. He was very cunning and his character was extremely strange. Regarding Wu Chen, she more or less harbored complicated thoughts. Don't go astray. I can treat it as if nothing happened. Taking a deep breath, Shiro Thousand Hand Maru could only take a step back and said, if you are willing to give up this action, I can let bygones be bygones. Let bygones be bygones? Hearing this, the corners of Wu Chen's mouth curled up even more. He said bluntly, you don't seem to understand the situation. Now, you are already a fish on the chopping board, and the person who is about to slaughter you is me. Seeing that Shiro Thousand Hand Maru was deliberately beating around the bush, Dustless also covered it up and spoke frankly. I can tell you clearly that no matter how you resist, you only have 2 choices. You can either take me to the Spirit King Palace, or let me occupy every corner of your body. Dustless was stubborn and forced Shiro Thousand Hand Maru into a corner. You bastard! You don't know what's good for you. Shiro Thousand Hand Maru was furious and her eyes changed rapidly. She was thinking of a way to deal with Dustless. She felt a headache coming on to this Dustless who was not afraid of boiling water. Shiro Thousand Hand Maru only felt that Vasto Lord was much cuter than this rascal. Oh right. Just at this moment, an idea suddenly flashed through Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru's mind. A stratagem was instantly formed. He looked at Dustless with a smile. What's wrong with this woman? Why did she suddenly change her personality? It shouldn't be possible. Dustless pondered and frowned. He was guessing what Shiro Thousand Hand Maru's purpose was. This woman was scheming and unreliable. It was impossible for her to surrender so easily. He immediately raised his guard. Aw, didn't you want me? Are you afraid now? Looking at Dustless who was hesitating, Shiro Thousand Hand Maru smiled and teased him. Afraid of you? Because Dustless was a little taller, he looked down at Shidoro Senju Maru and said loudly, I'm not afraid of you, Raba or Yamamoto. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Why did they retreat? Her beautiful eyes were filled with doubt as she asked in astonishment. Remove the skeletal arms behind you. Dustless raised his voice and said firmly. When he was doing that kind of thing, there were a few skeletal arms waving behind his back. Just thinking about it made him feel disgusted. I see. No problem. Shidoro Senjumaru raised her eyebrows slightly. Soon after, Under Wuchen's surprised gaze, she took off her captain's haori in broad daylight, revealing a seductive body that could make people's blood vessels spurt out. Her skin was as white as snow with a tinge of red. Every inch of her skin was extremely plain and smooth. At the same time, 2 pure white lotus arms were also taken out from behind her. Her movements were graceful as she removed the arms that were required for her daily work, revealing a peerless beauty. Her naked body was exposed right before Dustless's eyes. Gulp! Dustless was not a monk. Seeing such a hot scene, even if he was a stone man, he would definitely be hot all over. Dustless, who was already young and vigorous, was even more self-evident as he panted heavily. Who? Shidoro Senjumaru moved closer to Dustless's side and blew a breath of hot air into his ear. Her body fragrance flowed into the depths of his lungs through his nostrils. Like an anesthetic, Dustless's mind was sluggish. No, there's a problem. Dustless's eyes emitted a cold luster, and he instantly became clear-headed. When he was about to move sideways, he suddenly realized that his body was bound by a special piece of clothing, and he couldn't move at all. What the hell is this? Looking closely, Dustless's body was wrapped in a white mysterious coat. It was extremely sturdy, and he couldn't move at all. The spiritual pressure in his body was all restricted. How dare you say that my masterpiece is a ghost? How rude. This is called ultimate clothing. Shidoro Senjumaru walked gracefully in front of Dustless with a smug smile on her face and said, "As long as you enter it, everything will be over. You have lost, little perverted head captain." As if to deliberately vent her anger, Shidoro Senjumaru stepped forward and pinched Dustless's face. "So that's how it is. The reason why you seduced me was to make me distracted and give you enough time to sew the ultimate clothing." Recalling what happened just now, Dustless immediately stared at the naked Shidoro Senjumaru and ridiculed. "But is it really worth it? This is your second time. Those who don't know will think that you are a streaker." Shidoro Senjumaru's mouth twitched, and she almost vomited blood. This was indeed the second time she was seen naked by Dustless. "So what? I can just kill you. No one in the world has seen my real appearance," Shidoro Senjumaru said indifferently. "It's a pity that you can't do it." Casually sizing up the clothes that tightly bound him, Dustless was indifferent. Facing Shidoro Senjumaru, whose killing intent soared, he didn't have the slightest fear. On the contrary, her naked attire was very attractive to Dustless. "You have a sharp tongue. Even when you are about to die, you still like to show off," Shidoro Senjumaru said very coldly. Perhaps in her eyes, Dustless was already a dead body. In her eyes, there wasn't the slightest fluctuation of emotion, not even disgust. "Even if you can kill me once, it won't be a big deal. My existence is beyond the understanding of life. No one can kill me." Ignoring Shidoro Senjumaru, Dustless said calmly. Facing death, he wasn't the slightest bit afraid, because Dustless himself didn't know how many times he had died. In any case, he was fine. Chapter 1177. Shidoro Senjumaru was extremely furious. If Dustless lowered his head and admitted his mistake, or lowered his attitude, she wouldn't mind letting him live. After all, he could be considered as an ally in the past. However, Dustless's disdainful gaze had deeply hurt her. "Since you want to die so much, this concubine will fulfill your wish." With a cold expression, Shidoro Senjumaru waved her hand lightly. The ultimate clothes that wrapped around Dustless started to roll around rapidly like a swarm of insects. Pfff. Countless spikes appeared out of nowhere. There were thousands of them, and it was impossible to guard against them. With just a few simple moves, they pierced through Dustless's body. Blood flowed out from his body like a funnel. Dustless's body was covered with dozens of thumb-sized wounds. His flesh was badly mutilated. Cough, cough, cough. "You are really ruthless. I thought that even if you wanted to kill me, you wouldn't be so ruthless." Dustless, who was about to die, was out of breath. He was filled with a deep sense of powerlessness. "You are the one who asked for it," Shidoro Senjumaru said indifferently. She quietly observed Dustless, whose heart was slowly stopping. A complicated expression flashed past the corner of her eyes. Soon after, she looked at this boundless, unfamiliar world and muttered to herself, "Strange, he has already died completely. Why is the trick in this world still not dispelled? That is because I am not dead yet." A gust of chilly wind blew over. Dustless, who had a playful expression, appeared once again. With his powerful strength, he pressed Shidoro Senjumaru, who was caught off guard, to the ground. Bang! Dustless, who was brutally killed, actually turned into a block of wood. How is it possible that he is not dead yet? What kind of sorcery is this? Shidoro Senjumaru's expression changed as he panicked. His entire body felt cold. Only now did he realize that his clothes were not enough to cover his body. "Hurry up and get out of my way, it hurts." Dustless's hands had the strength of 10,000 caddies. He grabbed Shidoro Senjumaru's snow-white wrist until it turned red. "You still dare to say that it hurts? You killed me mercilessly just now. What is wrong with me taking revenge on you?" Dustless did not reduce his strength. His tone was filled with coldness. His face was expressionless. "You." Opening his mouth, Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru was speechless, and his pretty face lost its luster. "Poochie." Dustless's spiritual pressure leaked out. He tore his clothes apart, revealing his robust body. His muscles were extremely well proportioned and filled with explosive power. "What do you want?" Shidoro Senjumaru's tone was obviously filled with fear and panic. Two naked people gathered in an environment where there was no one around. It could be imagined what terrible things would happen. "I've already said that the price of resisting me is this cruel. Since you insist on not listening, now is the time for you to pay the price." "Poochie." An intense piercing pain spread throughout her body. She felt as if her entire body was about to be torn apart. Her entire body was bleeding, and her jade-like face became incomparably pale. It wasn't that Wu Chen was unreasonable. If he wanted to tame a woman, this method was the most effective and direct. Especially for a prideful woman like Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru. It was the most suitable method to use on her. The most primitive ambition of humans was shameless. Dustless transformed into a ferocious beast and ruthlessly ravaged Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru. She was an ice beauty with an arrogant personality. As a member of Squad Zero, she was used to being arrogant. If he didn't teach her an unforgettable lesson, the chances of taming her was zero. "Is there any use for you to look at me like I killed your father? In the world I lived in, there was a saying that life is like rape. Since you can't resist, then relax and enjoy it." Dustless pinched Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru's face. Her snow-white face could freeze one's fingers. Even the moment one touched her skin, one's fingers would be encased in a layer of ice. He couldn't help but feel that his life was bitter. While working hard, he still had to understand the pain of the ice. "I'll just treat it as being bitten by a dog. You can do whatever you want." Resisting Dustless's attack, Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru tried hard to make an indifferent expression. She was calm, but she obviously couldn't speak her mind. The beating of her slender eyelashes and the special feeling coming from her lower body made her infatuated. This kind of most primitive feeling of ecstasy made people unable to stop even if they wanted to. The tearing pain also disappeared completely. Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru was shocked to discover that her body was uncontrollably catering to Dustless. This is the nature of living creatures. There's no need to resist. Dustless chuckled. His sight fell on the tear stains at the corner of Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru's eyes. He couldn't help but sigh. He had no choice but to do this. A while ago, in order to think of a surprise attack on the Spirit King Palace, Dustless specially developed a ninjutsu. As long as a special space was implanted into the body of a member of Team Zero and integrated with their Spirit King power, they could ignore the difference in dimensions and forcibly break into the Spirit King Palace. Implanting a space inside the body was not an ordinary matter. Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru was not an ordinary person. As a member of Team Zero, her strength and power were infinitely close to perfection. Therefore, Dustless could only use this method. Don't glare at me with your teeth clenched. I swear I will not let you down in the future. Dustless once again promised. Women were always used to be coaxed and deceived. But I will definitely kill you. and I will use Zanpakuto to cut your body into countless pieces. After I dip it in syrup, it will release the devouring power of ants. Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru said with hatred. Her eyes were red, and her tone had a rare crying tone. Dustless was silent. This matter was his fault. He forcibly took away her most precious thing in 1,000 years. Even with his thick-skinned and shameless personality, he was extremely embarrassed. He didn't dare to look at Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru's eyes. He could only take advantage of her hatred to quietly transfer Ryatsu into Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru's body, and slowly integrate it with her Spirit King power. The future was still long, and the debts in the future could only be repaid slowly. Chapter 1178. In the sky above Soul Society, a white light flashed across the blue sky, and 3 figures stepped out from it. Without exception, each of these figures looked dispirited and exhausted, as if they were patients who had just recovered from a serious illness, dispirited and listless. These 3 people were Sajin Higashishiro and Ichigo Kurosaki. You all look very sad. Go to the 4th division first. I've already ordered them to prepare the treatment equipment in advance. We can immediately give you first aid. After a pleasant voice, Unohana Retsu appeared in a flash. The members of the 4th division behind her all went to support the 3 people, who could not even stand properly. Thank you, Captain Unohana. Ichigo Kurosaki and the others quickly thanked her, and went to the 4th division to receive treatment under the escort of the members of the 4th division. They actually didn't die. Looks like Chinkuan miscalculated. Looking at the 3 people who were running away, Unohana Retsu's face was covered in frost. Her body was covered in a faint blood-red light. At this moment, she looked exceptionally terrifying. Her shocking degree of brutality was comparable to a peerless killing god. The surrounding air was filled with the smell of blood. Even the air that went deep into the lungs was mixed with the nauseating smell of blood. I'll kill you all on Chinkuan's behalf. In the Kamui space, the air was filled with a lewd smell that made people's minds wander. Looking down, the 2 white bodies were especially eye-catching. I will definitely not let you off so easily. Just you wait. Also, you better not mention a word about this to me. If anyone else knows about this, I'll definitely take you down with me. After tidying up his clothes, Shidoro Senjumaru was filled with killing intent. The cold light shooting out of his eyes was like thousands of blades. There's no need to hate me so much. After all, you're one of my people now. We should all work together. Helping me is the same as helping yourself, Senjumaru. Seeing Shidoro Senjumaru's expression of hatred and disgust, Dustless frowned and rubbed his temples, trying to relieve the pressure. Help you? What nonsense are you talking about? You want me to help someone who stole my most precious? The culprit who stole my virginity? Ridiculous. Don't even think about it. I will definitely kill you. Towards the end of his speech, Shidoro Senjumaru's hair stood on end. He was like a peerless devil, and his entire body was suffused with energy fluctuations that caused people to have a lingering fear. However, facing Dustless, she was unable to draw her sword against him. There was a huge gap between their strengths, and attacking him would only bring disgrace upon herself. That's your freedom. I can't control you. Even so, there are some things that I have to say. Regardless of whether you trust me or not, I have to solemnly tell you that I will be responsible for you. Dustless raised his head and muttered to himself. There was no trace of regret in his indomitable spirit. Are you sure you want to be responsible for me? Sensing the decisiveness and freedom in his tone, his cold and dusty heart is slightly touched. Shidoro Thousand Hands Maru says faintly, if you want to make up for the debt you owe me, that's fine too. Give me your... Dustless's body trembled when he heard that. The gaze of Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru was actually looking at his. I'm telling you, don't mess around. Uncontrollably shivering, Dustless was speechless. He didn't expect Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru to want his most important thing as a man. If it's possible, and you allow it, I'm very happy to cut it off. Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru didn't hide anything and immediately said, I need your Jinzi to do an experiment and investigate your body. So you want to unlock the secret of my body. Dustless suddenly understood. He didn't care about this. He was afraid that this woman wanted to open up the seal to deal with him. Dustless was a real Jubi. Even if it was successfully analyzed, it wouldn't have the slightest effect. Moreover, he had countless trump cards. You want to do an experiment? Sure. Dustless chuckled with a naughty smile on his face. But you can come and get it yourself. Shudora Thousand-Handed Maru was stunned. Then her lungs were about to explode. She angrily pointed at Dustless and scolded. You despicable villain, do you want me to solve it for you? Then do you want me to solve it myself? Dustless's eyes narrowed into a crescent moon, and the smile on his face was full of evil. Shudora Thousand-Handed Maru hesitated. Looking at Dustless's sinister face, she could only stomp her feet. Unless she didn't want Dustless's Jeansy, she must solve this crucial problem at hand. You bastard, solve it yourself. Shudora Thousand-Handed Maru, who couldn't put down her face, ordered with a black face. Sorry, my hands are congenital and can't do that kind of thing. Since you can't do it, then we can only stop here. I'll open the Shenwei space now. Let's go back. As he spoke, Dustless's pupils began to twist, and the space in the world of Shenwei had signs of gradually collapsing. Hold on. Shudora Thousand-Handed Maru's eyelashes trembled, and she quickly stopped him. How could she let go of such a rare opportunity? In the end, she could only reluctantly say, Sit still, if you dare to mess around with me. Don't blame me for being ruthless. I will definitely make you regret it for the rest of your life. Chapter 1179. Dustless's face was glowing. It was rare for him to obey someone else's order. He sat on the ground obediently and looked at Shudora Thousand-Handed Maru with anticipation, indicating that she could start. Using force and taking the initiative were always two different concepts. Shudora Thousand-Handed Maru's face was red. She could explain Dustless using force before, but now she was taking the initiative to help Dustless. The concept was completely different. If other people know about this, I'll be struck by lightning and die a horrible death, cut into pieces. Dustless was speechless. He secretly sighed that Shudora Thousand-Handed Maru was smart but muddle-headed. Who would go out and talk about this kind of thing? Especially using force to take her was not a glorious thing. It was not worth showing off. That's for the best. Her white chin moved slightly, recalling the huge thing that was rampaging in Dustless's body just now. Shudora Thousand-Handed Maru resisted the discomfort in her heart and grabbed it. Wait, you have to use your hands. You can't use your bony hands. Seeing the bony hand reaching over, Dustless cursed in his heart and shouted, If you can't do it, then you should just kill me. You have to use your hands. Impossible. Shaking her head like a wavy bone, Shudora Thousand-Handed Maru rejected Dustless's suggestion without even considering it. Then let's break up. Shrugging, Dustless stood up again. His pupils twisted and surging eye power shot out. The mysterious alternate space was about to collapse and disappear. Come here. Seeing this, Shudora Thousand-Handed Maru's face changed and shouted, You better stop before you go too far. It's impossible to use my hands. Change to another way. Another way? Hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but be stunned. Staring at Shudora Thousand-Handed Maru's pink cherry lips, he smiled and said, I see you actually plan to use your mouth? Why didn't you say so earlier? This will work too. Bullsh *T. Shudora Thousand-Handed Maru's delicate face darkened. She stared at Dustless and sneered. You better not threaten me. The consequences are definitely not something that you can bear. I didn't force you. You asked for it yourself. Dustless rolled his eyes and said as if it had nothing to do with him. In short, you can choose between your mouth and your hand. Give me an answer in 1 minute, or I will immediately remove the Shenwei world. Dustless kicked the ball to Shudora Thousand-Handed Maru. In the end, he closed his eyes peacefully and signaled her to choose whatever she wanted. I didn't expect her to value her chastity so much. She usually acts like she doesn't care about it, but in the end, she treats it as precious as her own life. Dustless secretly despised in his heart as he looked at Shudora Thousand-Handed Maru's solemn little face. About a minute later, he opened his clear eyes. 1 minute is up. What's your choice? He opened his mouth and said coldly, I can't promise you anything. Settle it with your own hands. I'm a handicapped person. Don't force me to do something I don't want. Dustless waved his hand and refused. At the same time, he activated his eye power again. The Shunwei world was gradually collapsing. After a few seconds, Dustless and Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru appeared in the outside world. Stop it. You win. I choose to use my own hands. Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru's face turned red. She could only choose to compromise. She was so angry that she secretly gritted her teeth. She swore that when she developed new items in the future, she would not let Dustless go. Tiefeste. In the end, you still agreed to my condition. Dustless sat on the ground, and then lay down without moving. He rested his head on his arms, and began to enjoy the next happy life. After all, she was one of the only 5 members of Team Zero. Just this identity alone was enough to make Dustless excited. Ouch, it hurts. You didn't do it on purpose, did you? You should be content. It's already a blessing that you didn't cut it off. Hurry up and cut it off between your fingers. I'm scared just looking at it. No, this is for my work. Is that so? Then I can only remove the Shunwei world. Let's go our separate ways. Wait, I promise you. For 4 hours, Dustless had been threatening Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru. In order to obtain Dustless's Jingzi, investigate his body structure, and develop new items to deal with Dustless, Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru was willing to pay any price. Her rationality was burned by the flames of revenge. She did not reject any of Dustless's threats. Dustless was also in pain and happy at the same time. It was not until close to 3 hours later that Dustless removed the Shunwei world. In contrast to the energetic Dustless, Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru was sweating profusely. Her face was pale, and her right arm was sore. After working for several hours, she felt like her right arm was going to fall off. Just you wait. I will not let this matter go. Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru said coldly as she glared fiercely at Dustless. If it wasn't for the discomfort of her body, she might have already stood up with Dustless. Don't worry. It won't be long before we meet again. And the next time we meet, I reckon you won't even dare to lay your hands on me. Dustless ignored Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru's threat and smiled mysteriously. The next time we meet, either you die or I die. Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru's face was filled with boiling killing intent. Her gaze locked onto Dustless's face for 2 to 3 seconds. Shidoro Thousand-Handed Maru dragged her tired body and slowly left. The next time we meet, I will change my identity. I won't speak to you as an equal as the head captain, but as a spirit king looking down on your Zero squad. Chapter 1180. Inside the 4th Division's quarters, Dustless could not help but raise his eyebrows as he looked at the trio in the ward through the window. How unlucky. I thought that 1 or 2 of them would die, but all of them are still alive. That Thousand-Hand Maru just has to be a busybody. Otherwise, the 3 of them would probably disappear from this world. Dustless grumbled under the shade of a tree in the distance. Originally, he wanted to use this opportunity to get rid of Sajin and Higashishiro. Who would have thought that they would be so tough? Captain Sajin and Captain Higashishiro have been opposing us for a long time. We need to get rid of these 2 obstacles. Beside Dustless, Unohana Retsu nodded in agreement. At this point, she had completely stepped onto Dustless's pirate ship. The chances of her turning back were close to 0. She could only walk down this path to the end. It's fine. Let them be free for a few days. Dustless waved his hand, indicating that Unohana Retsu did not need to worry. If they died in the 4th Division for no reason, it would definitely raise suspicions. Even if Dustless was the head captain, he would not be able to cover for them. Speaking of which, how's the situation on your side? Shidoro Thousand-Hand Maru is very difficult to deal with. Unohana Retsu asked curiously as her gemstone eyes circled around Dustless. Pa. Dustless chuckled and lightly pecked Unohana Retsu's face when she was not paying attention. Of course I dealt with that difficult woman. Otherwise, with Thousand-Hand Maru's temper, do you think I would still be alive? Dustless rolled his eyes and replied with a question. He then told Unohana Retsu everything that had happened. She's probably going to explode from anger. After a while, Unohana Retsu said, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Although she was disgusted by Dustless's methods, she could not deny that it was the most effective. If I was not as strong as her, I would have been cut into pieces already. Dustless felt a chill run down his spine when he thought of Shidoro Senjumaru's personality as a mad scientist. Then he rejoiced and said, but taking away her chastity can shut Senjumaru's mouth. She can't go out and say that she was raped by me. So you don't have to worry about Senjumaru in the future. Anohua's smile was too beautiful to behold. Sometimes, the most despicable method was the most effective. Next, it's time to deal with these weeds. Staring at Zuozhen and Toshiro Rifen, Dustless's face suddenly turned cold. In Soul Society, there were still many captains who opposed him. For example, Higashi Shiro of Rifen Valley, Saozhen of Katsumura, Suifeng and Kumubaya. These unstable factors had to be dealt with before they could invade the Spirit King Palace. It's better to do it secretly. Right now there's Aizen Sosuke outside, Yawatch in the dark, and Squad Zero in the dark. If we are exposed, there will be very few people who are on our side. Unohua said worriedly. It was not hard to see that Dustless's situation was not good. Retsu, there's no need to worry. They're just a bunch of small fries. Anyone who has been attacked by Aizen Sosuke's Hogyoku is as good as having a guillotine on their neck. Dustless said with a relaxed smile. His words showed that he did not care about Aizen and Yawatch at all. He would not stay in this world for long. After dealing with Aizen and Yawatch and devouring Soul King, Dustless would choose to go to the next world. Those who always oppose me must be sent to the afterlife. Since they like the former Captain Yamamoto so much, I'll fulfill their wishes. I'll be a good person until the end. They're all dead. Aizen Sosuke frowned and asked in confusion. Who did it? Thousands of Killian were killed just like that. Did Dustless do it himself? Aizen Sosuke could only think of one person with such shocking strength, Dustless. It's not him. It's a young woman. She's very strong, stronger than anyone I've seen before. Killian is at most an ant in front of her. Okiura explained. Then he dug out his eyeball and crushed it with a bang. The huge eyeball turned into thousands of pieces and floated into Aizen's mind like a movie. So it's Squad Zero. After thinking for a few seconds, Aizen muttered, forget it, it's just Killian. There's no need to care about those small fries. Tell the 10 Blades to be careful. Soon our plan will begin. Understood, Aizen-sama. Okiura said respectfully before disappearing without a trace. It seems the situation is worse than I thought. Dustless and Soul Society are troublesome enough, and now Squad Zero has joined the fray. Aizen Sosuke felt a headache coming on. He touched the sphere in his stomach and said in relief, but after I completely fuse with Hogyoku, this ownerless throne of heaven will be branded with Aizen Sosuke's name. Time flew, and 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. In the first squad's quarters. Last time, you failed to kill with a borrowed knife. Do you still want to live this time? In the empty hall, the terrifying screams of the head captain, Dustless Ghostly, rang out, making people tremble with fear. Are you sure this method will work? A gentle voice sounded. It belonged to Unohana Retsu. Of course it will. First, we'll deal with Sazawa. Don't worry about him for now, he's just a small fry. Everyone in Soul Society knows about the relationship between Sazawa and East Sensei. It's understandable if Sazawa betrays us one day. After all, they have a close personal relationship. Wu Chen said with a confident smile. He had already thought of a plan to wipe out the left side of the village. Chapter 1181. In the 4th Division's quarters, the Shinigami's recovery ability was extremely amazing. In just a few days, although Higashi Shiro and Shinozaki Ichigo had not fully recovered yet, Sajin, who had the body of a beast, had fully recovered. Captain Unohana, is something the matter? Sajimura Zuozashi, who had already changed into Captain Haori, asked curiously. Unohana Retsu rarely paid attention to him. There are reports that a great void has infiltrated the 65th district of Drifting Soul Street. The captains of the various divisions are still busy. Unohana Retsu frowned and said worriedly, "Great void." Hearing this, Zuozhan was stunned for a second, and then he immediately volunteered, "Leave it to me. I have recovered from all my injuries, and I can find a group of Great Void Realm experts to practice my skills. My body is going to rust if I lie in the 4th division." "Are you sure you want to go?" Unohana Retsu asked again with a cautious tone. "The head captain said that the origin of that great void is very big. He told us not to act rashly for now." "Humph, even if that man is the head captain, I will never acknowledge him." Speaking of Dustless, Sajimura Zuozashi was furious and left the 4th division in a huff. From the looks of it, he was heading towards Divorce Street. As soon as Sajimura Zuozashi left the ward, Unohana Retsu's smile disappeared and was replaced by endless coldness. "Retsu, I was right. As long as you mention my name in front of that man, he will immediately go berserk." Wu Chen suddenly appeared behind Unohua Lai and hugged her waist. He gently sniffed Unohua Lai's body fragrance, and his hands began to move involuntarily. "Don't mess around." Slapping away Dustless's hands, Unohana Retsu asked suspiciously, "Is the person you found reliable? The other party is a great void on the level of Vasto Lord. What if he resists?" "Don't worry, Nero's loyalty to me is second only to Hellable." Dustless gave her a comforting look and was extremely calm. "You." Unohana Retsu did not know whether to laugh or cry. At the same time, she deeply admired Dustless's methods. On the surface, he was the head captain of Soul Society, the leader of the Grim Reapers, but behind his back, he was actually plotting against Spirit King. Not only that, he also raised 2 top-level Great Void beings like Vasto Lord. Not only that, but it also seemed to be inextricably linked to Quincy, the 65th district of Drifting Soul Street. Strange it should be here. It doesn't seem like the Great Void has invaded. Zuozhan looked around. Although it couldn't be said to be a paradise on Earth, at least it was very peaceful. The faces of the people passing by were full of peace. In short, there were no signs of the invasion of the Great Void Realm. Boom boom boom. Suddenly, a green light flashed in the void, and the earth-shattering explosion attracted the attention of Zuozhan. He hurriedly used Shuinpa to search for the source. Not only him, but the captains of Soul Society had also heard the news and rushed over to the 65th district of Drifting Soul Street. "It seems to have started. I hope Captain Kimura has good luck." In the sky, 2 black afterimages whizzed by. The one who spoke was Dustless. "I hope we won't be exposed." Compared to the optimistic Dustless, Unohana Retsu was obviously more worried. "Retsu, don't worry. In this world, there are only 2 people that Zuozhan values. One is the fallen captain, and the other is East Sage, whom he has known for 100 years. Zuozhan, who had rushed to the center of the scene, opened his eyes widely and saw everything in the world like the waves of an ocean. A great void being standing in the void quickly attracted his attention. "You are Aranka?" Zuozhan asked coldly as he pulled out his Zanpakuto. "You have guts to break into Soul Society alone. Even if you are Vasto Lord, you won't be able to escape." "My name is Niru. I was sent by Lord East Sage. Among the 10 blades, I am ranked 3rd. The mysterious great void being Niru said. "Lord East Sage? You mean East Sage? How is that guy?" Zuozhan asked anxiously, ignoring the fact that they were enemies. Niru nodded and replied, "It is indeed him." Remembering Dustless's instructions, Niru continued, "Lord East Sage is in Soul Society." "He is in Soul Society? Take me to see him." Zuozhan was very excited. He was afraid that Niru would be suspicious, and said, "I am a friend of East Sage. We have known each other for 100 years." Zuozhan took out the photos he kept. The 2 of them leaned close to each other. At that time, they were not Shinigami yet. "That's fine." Niru nodded and pointed to the east. "Come with me. Hueco Mundo's temporary base is there." Regardless of whether Zuozhan agreed or not, Niru left first and disappeared in a rainbow. "There? I remember, it's the 80th district of Luhan Street." Zuozhan thought for a moment and followed. He was confident in his strength. Even if he couldn't win, escaping was not a problem. So. Zuozhen increased his ryatsu, and his speed increased several times as he approached Niru. When he opened his mouth and was about to ask East Sage, Qin Tian's roar exploded throughout Soul Society. Damn you, Zuozhen. I have treated you well, but now you are colluding with the enemy behind my back. How dare you? Wu Chen's sorrowful and anguished voice spread throughout the entire Soul Society. His tone was filled with anger and flames that soared to the sky. Dustless stood in front of Niru and Zuozhen like a ghost. He shouted angrily, "You colluded with the enemy, and this great void is Aizen's 10 blades." Chapter 1182. Wu Chen's face was filled with sorrow, as if he had suffered a great humiliation. His entire body was suffused with murderous intent, and a murderous aura filled the air. Even the sky 1,000 feet away was incomparably cold. It was as if this place was not Soul Society, but the snow-covered easternmost land. Saozawa opened his mouth and looked at Nero beside him. This was a great void at the level of Vasto Lord, and she was also one of Aizen's subordinates. I didn't betray Soul Society, I just went to rescue East Sage, Saozawa said firmly. You didn't betray Soul Society. Hearing this, Dustless was so angry that he laughed. He pointed at Nero and shouted, "You and Hueco Mundo's Vasto Lord are standing side by side. If you want to prove your innocence, get out of my way. Otherwise, I have the right to treat you as a traitor," Dustless threatened, his words full of murderous intent. Saozawa lowered his head and hesitated for a while before saying, "After I bring East Sage back to Soul Society, I will listen to the head captain's punishment. As for now, I won't surrender." You want to piss me off." Dustless's old face was red. He looked at Saozawa with bitter hatred, but his heart was overjoyed. The opportunity in front of him was to completely deal with Saozawa. No one would say anything if a traitor killed him. "Is that so? Since you insist on not repenting, I can only deal with you impartially." Wu Chen's cold eyes were fixed on the left side of the village. His whole body was surrounded by a murderous aura, and his cold eyes were even colder than ice. "Dao Breaker, head captain." Just as Dustless was about to subdue Saozawa, a group of captains rushed over. Looking at the tense situation, they were worried. Aizen Sosuke was eyeing Soul Society like a tiger watching its prey from the outside. What if a fight broke out inside Soul Society? "Captain Saozawa, please step aside. Is that a great void next to you? Catch her first." The captain of the 2nd Division, So Feng, said. Her face was full of vigilance, as if she was facing a great enemy. She could feel a strong sense of danger from this great void, and the invisible pressure made her feel very uncomfortable. "He won't step aside. Zuozhen has betrayed Soul Society." With a stern expression, Dustless fanned the flames and said, "He and Vastotad are standing together. This explains everything." All the captains were stunned when they heard this. They looked at the left side of the village in disbelief. "This old man will not regret it. Eastern Deity is my close friend, from Hueco Mundo. But now you are standing with the Great Void." Without giving Zuozhen a chance to speak, Dustless said in a hoarse voice, "Put down your Zanpakuto before I get angry, and I can let bygones be bygones." "Sir Head Captain." Hearing this, all the Shinigami looked at Dustless in shock. They all knew about the conflict between Zuozhen and Dustless. Letting him go this time was a great favor. "A bunch of idiots. I said this because he will definitely refuse my conditions." Wu Chen was beaming with joy in his heart. He knew Zuozhen's character. He would never give up on the Eastern Deity. That was why he said that. Otherwise, he would have killed this stinky bear long ago. "I have to pull Eastern Deity out of Aizen Sosuke's black nest, so I'm sorry," Zuozhen said decisively. "I think I have treated you well, but you are going against us for a mere Eastern Deity. Damn it," Wu Chen said sadly. Then he ordered bitterly, "Captains, listen to my order. Now arrest this treacherous traitor for me." All the captains looked at each other, but they didn't do anything. "Bastard, are you waiting for me to do it myself?" Dustless said with fire in his eyes. His eyes looked at Kachiki Byakuya, Nishitani Shiro, and the others. They didn't care, obviously, they didn't care about Dustless's words. These bastards are really two-faced. On the surface, they treat me as the head captain, but there are almost no people who really listen to me. Looking around, Dustless saw the changes in everyone's expression. He was a new captain who hadn't even been in office for a year. Naturally, he wasn't as prestigious as Yamamoto. Well, you are no match for him. Give me a chance to kill him personally. Dustless's eyes bloomed with killing intent. He quietly condensed Ryatsu in his palm, and gave Nero a subtle look, indicating her to leave Soul Society quickly. Kakaka. The black voice flashed out of thin air. Because it was too fast, the captains didn't expect it and watched Nero leave. Everything happened too suddenly, and they only realized it when the black voice closed. Since you don't repent, then I'm sorry, Captain Yamamura. I can only remove your name from Soul Society. You have only yourself to blame. Dustless's cold eyes locked on Sajin, who was abandoned by the world, and the killing intent in his body boiled. Captain Yamamura, let go. We will cooperate with the head captain to arrest you, Shunsui suddenly said, making his position clear. Yukitake Jushiro looked at him doubtfully and also nodded. If Dustless personally made a move, he didn't even need to think to know that he would absolutely be miserably annihilated in the end. Sajin was Yamamoto's disciple, and like Shunsui and Yukitake Jushiro, he certainly didn't like to see his fellow apprentice killed. These two bastards are very cunning. But it's best if you are willing to do it. Dustless thought and restrained his killing intent. He also understood their idea, but it didn't matter whether Sajin died or not. In short, he would be removed from Godai 13. Even if he didn't kill him, Avicii Hell would be Sajin's eternal home. Chapter 1183. Unohana Retsu looked at the scene in front of her quietly without any emotion. There was only one thought in her mind: pity and sympathy. You guys are no match for him in terms of strength, and in terms of intelligence, you guys are even worse than Shinkuren, who seems to have the ability to predict the future. You guys are inferior to him in every aspect. I really don't understand why you guys would blindly resist. Unohana Retsu couldn't help but sigh in her heart. They knew it was a dead end, but they still chose to resist. Even if they were killed, they would be seeking their own death. For example, Suijit Sumura. There are only two people I respect the most in my life. One of them is the head captain who led me to the right path. The other is East Sensei, who has been my friend for 100 years. If you guys really think of me as a friend, please move aside. Suijit Sumura replied stubbornly. His Zanpakuto's words were cold and piercing. Captain Jitsumura, don't be stubborn. Soul Society is where you belong. East Sensei has already fallen. Shunsui Jingle tried to persuade him with a friendly tone. It was very persuasive, making people lower their guard. However, if his target was a block of wood, it would be useless no matter how eloquent he was. Suijitsumura was like that. He only had East Sensei in his heart. Shunsui Jingle's words were ignored. In the end, you guys haven't made a move yet. As expected, this kind of thing is better left to me. Who told me to be the bad guy? Dustless stretched his waist and took a step forward, sweeping to the front of Jingle Chunshui and the others. Head captain, no matter what, Captain Takemura is our former colleague. We just need to capture him. There's no need to kill him. Remembering Wuchen's cruel method of eliminating the root of the problem, Yukitake Jushiro reminded him worriedly. It's hard to control power. It's best if Captain Jitsumura surrenders himself. If he chooses to resist, it's normal for him to lose an arm or a leg. Dustless's smile was very evil. If the previous head captain was as hot as the sun, then the Dustless in front of him was as dark and terrifying as hell. His entire body was filled with an ominous aura. He was like a devil wearing the clothes of the god of death. The corner of his mouth and the teasing eyes, including his cynical smile, were the most realistic portrayal. Don't give me that look. Even if you're the head captain, this old man doesn't approve of you. You bastard. You are the main reason why East Deity fell into the void. When enemies saw each other, their eyes would turn red. Right now Zuozhan was like this. His huge eyes turned red, and his entire body was filled with violent destructive energy waves. Tao Breaker 73, Dual Lotus Azure Flame Fall. Blazing flames swept over, raising the temperature of the surrounding air without limit, evaporating the moisture in the atmosphere. The dry feeling was nauseating and extremely uncomfortable. Destroying the environment is a big problem. As the captain, you don't even have the determination to protect Soul Society. Dustless's cheerful manner caused all of the captains to be slightly stunned, and they all lowered their heads at the same time. It wasn't without reason that he was able to become the head captain. At the very least, he had the ability to remain unfazed even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. Buzz buzz buzz. Right at this moment, a ripple suddenly appeared in the void, and a vortex gradually expanded. Kemui! Dustless shouted, and the vortex instantly expanded by more than 100 times, forming a small black hole, and the attacking Tao Breaker was suddenly sucked in. Like a stone sinking into the sea, there was no movement at all. Hateful. It's like God deliberately sent him to go against me. Zhuozhen, who was clenching his iron fist, muttered. His big mouth full of fangs was terrifying, and his eyes were full of fear and unwillingness as he looked at Dustless. Gritting his teeth, Zhuozhen finally chose to release his Zanpakuto. Boom! Heaven's wrath. Shoo shoo shoo. The sky suddenly turned dark. The captains raised their eyes and looked into the depths of the void. A giant foot was falling from the sky, and the exaggerated area was comparable to a mountain. Retreat, this is the localized Heaven's wrath. Xuansui's pupil shrank and he quickly ordered. He took the lead to pull Jushuru Yukitake back to avoid the falling giant foot. Retreat? We the Shinigami have to retreat in the face of a traitor, then who will protect Soul Society? Looking at the giant foot falling from the void, Dustless whispered, and the earth cracked, and the mountains in the distance disintegrated into particles. Uchiha Flame Formation. The solid ground trembled inexplicably, like an earthquake, and then a blazing flame rose from the ground, and a red demonic luster rose from the ground, and a flame barrier tens of meters high was exposed to the air. What is that strange thing? Shunsui and the others exclaimed with their eyes wide open. When this huge barrier descended, it was as if they were in the furnace of hell, and the whole world was very hot. Boom boom. Finally, under everyone's surprised gaze, the falling giant foot kicked the flame barrier, and the flame barrier trembled violently, and it seemed like it was going to break. Most people thought that it would be a lose-lose situation. But who would have thought that the giant foot directly evaporated like water and disappeared without a trace? Between heaven and earth, only the ancient flame barrier was left, and it was filled with the ancient atmosphere. Chapter 1184. Zhuozhen was trembling with anger. Because he was a Leakin, his hair stood on end. His face was filled with despair, unwillingness, and hatred. Why is it that the more treacherous and despicable a person is, the more powerful they are? Zhuozhen questioned the sky. It was rare for him to complain, and his tone was desolate. What a pitiful insect. The more you stick to the rules, the weaker you are. Those who know how to take advantage of the situation, the stronger they are. Dustless turned a deaf ear to Zhuozhen's hatred. There were at least 1,000 people who hated him. There was no need to care about them. They were just insects not worth mentioning. Those who liked to hate others were actually the most useless. Take Zhuozhen for example. If he had the strength to kill Dustless, he wouldn't hate him. He could just kill Dustless with one slash. Out of sight, out of mind. But he couldn't, so he hated Dustless. Boom boom boom. Zhuozhen didn't hold back at all. He wanted to fight to the death. Only in this way could he break through the defense of these captains. He had to save his only remaining friend in this world, Higashi-sensei. Although Arankuin's method is despicable, this Zhuozhen is also stubborn. He is determined to follow Sosuke Aizen. You won't be able to persuade him with just a few words. Unohana Retsu shook her head. In her eyes, Zhuozhen was just seeking death. He didn't have enough strength, but he still wanted to show off. This kind of person would die the quickest. Tao Breaker 88. Flying Dragon Strikes the Thief. The thick beam of light was like an unsheathed divine sword, slicing the entire sky into two halves. Want to run? Dustless narrowed his eyes. He suddenly felt that Sojin was about to run. He snorted. "If you run away in front of me, I'll give you the position of head captain." Wu Chen sneered. At the same time, 6 black iron rods shot out from his hands. A hexagonal special enchantment was immediately formed, isolating the entire world and completely cutting off all contact with the outside world. 6 crimson suns formation. As Dustless's voice fell, the sealed world was airtight, and there was no way out. The left side of the village was also sealed inside. The toughness of this enchantment was beyond imagination. It could even withstand the Baijidama of the 10-tailed beast without being affected. The strength of this enchantment was self-evident. There was almost no attack in this world, and any creature could leave this place. Unless it was a foreign species like the Void who could open a black chamber at will. Don't make a fool of yourself with your insignificant brilliance. Dustless's eyes were blurred by the blinding light. He simply waved his hand and extinguished it. The light beam that flew over exploded beside him, but it did not have any effect. Dustless's clothes didn't even touch Dustless's clothes. In an instant, he became a transparent person who could ignore all attacks. It was as if fireworks were casually set off in the sky. It was just for show, and the probability of it hurting someone was 0. Gulp. Just as the battle was getting intense, Dustless's stomach suddenly growled. Ayaya. It seems that I have to end this quickly. It's not worth it to starve me because of you. Soul Society's cuisine is still my favorite. Zwuzin's head was full of black lines, and his hands that were holding the Zanpakuto almost dropped. He stared at Dustless indignantly. He was a dignified captain, but he didn't even have the time to eat with Dustless. It was simply disdaining him and treating him as a worthless garbage. Jingle Shunshui and the others were helpless. The first thing to learn in a one-on-one battle with Dustless was not the skills, but how to prevent oneself from being angered to death. Bankai Kalasutra, King of Heaven's Wrath. The armored giant's head reached the sky, and his feet stepped on the ground. His powerful legs could crush the world, and his slender sword could kill all creatures without any effort. Watch me destroy your garbage enchantment now, Zwuzhin shouted after Bankai. His confidence skyrocketed, and he looked contemptuously at the enchantment that was thinner than paper. His face was full of sarcasm. Do as you wish. Dustless chuckled and looked at Zwuzhin playfully. He grabbed a blade of grass from nowhere and stuffed it into his mouth with a gloating expression. Bang bang bang. With just 2 steps, his huge body shook the mountains and rivers, and the earth was as fragile as paper. With a gentle step, countless cracks would appear. Clang clang clang. Zwuzhin pulled out his sword from the scabbard, and after gathering enough strength, he slashed at the enchantment with all his strength. Bang bang bang. He thought that the enchantment would burst in an instant, but unexpectedly, the enchantment was intact. Instead, the huge body of King of Heaven's Wrath was mercilessly bounced back and fell to the ground. The mountain behind him was smashed by him. This enchantment. What the hell is it? How can it be so extraordinary? The captains were stunned. Dustless casually threw out 6 black iron rods. They thought that it was just to buy time, but now it seems that although it was as thin as a cicada's wing, its hardness is beyond any enchantment known at present. The most unpleasant thing is that this kind of powerful enchantment seems to be only Dustless can use it. This is not fair. Chapter 1185. Dustless looked at the embarrassed Swazashi, and at the same time, he winked at the captains beside him. See, this is what happens when you overestimate yourself. Everyone take this as a warning. The captain's expression changed slightly. In the eyes of others, this might be a joke, but in their ears, it was more like a warning and deterrence. Sigh. Shunsui and Yukitake looked at each other and saw the helplessness and sadness in each other's eyes. This was a secret warning to the captains, or they might face the same fate in the future. These captains were not fools. According to Dustless's strength, he could take down Swazashi in 2 or 3 moves. Humiliating him again and again was probably a warning. Their true intentions were not in the wine, and the spearhead was directed at the group of captains. Boom boom boom. The overbearing spiritual pressure swept out, and the whole world inside the seal was shaking and could collapse at any time. The thick murderous intent locked onto Dustless. "Hey, you don't have to stare at me. I won't let you out." Facing Swazashi's ferocious eyes, Dustless didn't care and smiled. "No matter what, although I don't know how this barrier is made, as long as I kill you, it will naturally collapse and collapse." While talking, the giant already stood up. A pair of massive eyeballs were like copper bells, even much larger than Dustless's head. "Kill me? With just you?" Dustless laughed in disdain when he heard this, and he said with ridicule, "There are really many people who overestimate their ability. For the sake of the so-called fetters, they clearly know that they aren't a match for the other party, yet they insist on coming to give away their lives." Dustless gradually lost his playful mood and looked serious. Apparently, he was starting to take this seriously. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Noticing Dustless's strange state, Swazashi attacked first, and a huge blade wind swept towards Dustless. Clang clang clang. He didn't even use his Zanpakuto. Dustless directly grabbed the 10-meter-long blade with his right hand. He didn't use any tricks, he just grabbed the blade with his hand. Just how strong is his body? Even his spiritual pressure didn't work. Shunsui and the others were shocked. Although a captain should have the strength to kill a captain-level Shinigami, this scene was too exaggerated. Dustless didn't even use his spiritual pressure. TSK. Let's dissect it and see what it is made of. Nyamaoli sneered and thought to himself, "You want to kill me with your half-baked skills? Go back home and train for a few hundred years." Grasping the huge blade of the long saber tightly, Wuchen suddenly exerted force and threw it to the left. Under everyone's horrified gaze, the saber-wielding Zhuazhen on the other side was naturally thrown away. All of them were thrown away by Wu Chen's tyrannical strength. Boom boom boom. His huge body slammed into a mountain in the distance, and Kalasutra's wrath was thrown more than 20 meters away. His huge body crashed into an unfortunate mountain, and caused it to collapse. How much strength is needed to do that? The group of captains took a deep breath and suppressed the trembling of their bodies. Initially, they thought that although this head captain was powerful, there was a limit to measure him. Most of them thought that Wuchen was at the same level as the previous head captain, Yamamoto Genryu Shigukuni, or even weaker than him. Now it seemed that they were wrong. Without the slightest bit of Ryatsu, head captain Yamamoto relied on his body's hardness to catch a full-strength attack from a captain with his bare hands. It was still a big question whether the old head captain Yamamoto could do it. All in all the captains were afraid of Dustless. Ow 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 ow. The roar resounded in the space inside the enchantment, and everyone's ears were stuffy. This violent tone was full of thousands of helplessness and hatred, as well as unwillingness and fear, and many other complex emotions. Looking at it, it was Swazashi with a sad expression. "Do I have no choice but to surrender?" Swazashi's face was full of unwillingness, but he had to admit that he was not Dustless's captain. He was as weak as a child who had not grown up. In the face of a muscular adult, he could only be beaten up. The edge of 1,000 hands can't be touched. The hand of darkness can't be reflected. Fast treasure. Big wheel, the gray turret. The bow is drawn far away, and the bright light dissipates. Swazashi began a long chant, and at the end, many pink lights flew out from his hands. "You are indeed the captain's student. Ordinary captains may not be able to use this Hado, but you can chant it. It is indeed worthy of praise." Dustless gave him a look of appreciation. Hado number 91 was indeed powerful. Hado number 91, 1,000 hands bright sky cannon. Countless pink lights swept over, and there was no time to dodge at all. The number was like a storm, blocking all escape routes. But with your level, you are still too weak. Let's stop here. Focusing on the incoming lights, Dustless's right eye changed. A white flower eye flashed, and his hands closed, and a huge tornado came out. Silver wheel reincarnation explosion. The violent wind swept out, and the attacking lights were instantly shattered. Swazashi's huge body was a rare live target, and he was completely swallowed by the tornado. Poochie, poochie, poochie. Inside the tornado, a bloody scene played out. The biting cold wind turned into thousands of cold blades, mercilessly waving at Swazashi and dismembering him in an instant. Large pieces of flesh fell on the ground, and Swazashi looked like he was being executed. The bloody scene was too horrible to look at, and even these experienced captains could not help but feel disgusted. They could not help but distance themselves from Dustless. Chapter 1186. Silver naturally saw the strange state of the captains, but he didn't care. As the head captain, he had to maintain the absolute strength that was enough to intimidate the Godii 13. It was good to let them know the difference between them. That way, there would always be idiots who overestimated themselves coming to challenge him. Huh. He can still stand up? Lycans have amazing recovery ability. Silver's tone was calm, but there was a hint of surprise. Following Dustless's gaze, Sajin stood up again. Even if his body was crushed, he still didn't give up. No, he's already at the end of his life. It's his willpower that's supporting him. How sad. Seeing this, Dustless felt a bit of sympathy for this bear. He cared about Higashi Sendai, but Higashi Sendai only cared about Sosuke Aizen. A pitiful person must have something to hate. Endless light appeared on his fingertips, and the destructive light beam locked onto Sajin. Path of destruction, head captain. Not giving Dustless a chance to attack, Yukitake Jushiro came forward and pleaded. Although Sajin is guilty, he doesn't deserve to die. Not to mention that he has worked for Soul Society for hundreds of years. How about we put him in hell to reflect on his mistakes? Hearing this, Dustless didn't say anything. The light in his hand continued to flicker, and his cold eyes quietly observed the captains. After a few seconds, the light disappeared. Looking at Sajin's miserable appearance, even if he could recover, his combat power would be greatly reduced. After all, his Zanpakuto was crushed by Dustless. The most important thing was that this eyesore would be removed from his position as the head captain. It didn't matter if he was killed or not, as long as he left the Godii 13. Then let him go this time. Dustless pondered, and his eyes turned into Sharingan. He stared at Sajin, and the Magatama emitted a strange fluctuation. Boom! In the end, under everyone's shocked gaze, Sajin couldn't bear the burden anymore, and fell to the ground. He was exhausted, and he instantly stopped his Bankai posture. Head captain, even if Suojun can be spared from death, he still has to be punished. The captain of the 2nd Division, Sofeng, stepped forward and suggested, "How dare you publicly partner up with a great void? This has crossed the bottom line of Soul Society's tolerance. You will be sentenced to at least 1,000 years in prison." All the captains nodded their heads in agreement. Why don't? Shunsui and Yukitake Jushiro looked at each other in dismay. The words that were about to come out of their mouths were swallowed back into their mouths. Dustless glanced at the two of them. There's no need to lock him up for so long. I believe that Captain Yamamura is loyal to Soul Society. He was just tempted by that despicable Vasto Lord and Sosuke Aizen. When Dustless mentioned Aizen Sosuke, he clenched his teeth and made a decision. That's why I've decided to spare him the death penalty this time. However, he still needs to be punished. I'll imprison him for 3 years. I hope he can turn over a new leaf. The Godii 13 will welcome him back. Buzz buzz buzz. As soon as he finished speaking, the captain lost his ability to think. He stared at Wu Chun dumbfounded. When did this narrow-minded head captain become so generous? The group of death gods all felt that it was impossible. They immediately sized up the awe-inspiring and righteous Dustless. Everyone, Soul Society still needs everyone to work together. We have to be united in front of the enemy. Dustless said firmly. His face was full of generosity, and he forgot about the grudge between him and Zuojun. You idiots! How can you believe such words? Dustless's face was full of righteousness, but he was laughing in his heart. The entire world might end in 3 years. He could just leave by then. Of course, there was no need to imprison Zuojun for so long. A few years of confinement could win over people's hearts. Everything ends here. Everyone go back. Dustless waved his hand and said righteously. 7 days passed in the blink of an eye. In the 1st Division's building, Dustless had just finished listening to the report from the 12th Division. Ever since Sosuke Aizen defected, his every move had been monitored by Soul Society. Seems like it will take some time. I can't rely on Sosuke Aizen to make King Keys. The only way is to directly invade Soul King Palace. Inside the empty team house, Wu Chen's low murmur sounded. Do you need me to go with you? Unohana asked expectantly. To be honest, she was quite curious about Soul King Palace. There's no need for that. If you go, I'll have a lot more scruples. The Zero Squad isn't anything good. For the sake of the Spirit King, they're willing to abandon everything. Even if it's their old friends, they're willing to fight. Dustless shook his head and said, thinking of Soul King's strange appearance, he couldn't help but laugh. There was nothing good about that appearance. He was just a monster whose limbs were chopped off. What about Soul Society? The head captain's sudden departure is suspicious. Unohana said. That's even less of a problem. Didn't you see that when Mayuri looked at me, his eyes were a lot more respectful? That old man and I have yet to resolve our grudge. Dustless chuckled. After going around Zhuazhen, the Godii 13's captains had changed their opinion of him. You are really despicable, Chinkoan. Unohana said in admiration. She admired Dustless's ability to win people's hearts. It wouldn't be long before Yamamoto's influence in Genryosai Shigeki disappeared. Chapter 1187. Unohana had to admit that sometimes, a soft knife was more useful than a hard knife, and the effect was even greater. Furthermore, I can leave the Shadow Clone in Soul Society as a cover. I can just cancel it when I'm in the captain's meeting. It's just a formality. Dustless said indifferently. Not to mention that it was impossible to find out. Even if those captains found out, what could they do? What they could do was next to nothing, because Soul Society had no way to contact Spirit King Palace. The next time we meet, I will be changing my identity. Do you want to celebrate? Dustless suddenly changed the topic and smiled. Change your identity? Hearing this, Unohana was startled at first, then asked in confusion. You are changing your identity all the time. Head Captain, 7th Division Captain, 4th Division Vice Captain, and many other random identities. What are you going to change to now? That's not what I'm talking about. Dustless shook his head mysteriously. Although he had many identities, none of them were useful. You are about to invade Spirit King Palace, and you still have time to think about these random things? Unohana pouted her lips and grumbled. Could it be? Suddenly realizing something, Unohana said in surprise. The next time we meet, you won't be a Spirit King, right? Ayaya, you are so smart. Come, give me a kiss. In the mysterious space, a visible ripple appeared in the void. Although the ripple was negligible, the members of the Zero Squad who lived here were all experts among experts, so they rushed over at the first moment. 5 figures gathered here, and all of them looked at the hole in the sky in shock. What's going on? A guard from the War Master's division thought to himself. He looked at the 4 people who had confused expressions on their faces, and saw that they were also confused. After a while, the ripple expanded and formed a mysterious hole. A figure walked out from it. A person? How did he enter Spirit King Palace? How is this possible? Unohana Tongxing said in disbelief. She pinched her own skin, and the pain made her realize that this was not a dream. Yo, I didn't expect everyone to be waiting for me here in advance. What an honor. A familiar voice came from the void, and the blurry figure gradually became clear. Dustless walked out with a frivolous expression and a frivolous smile. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. There was only Dustless in the sky, and 5 figures suddenly appeared and surrounded him. Wang Yu's Zanpakuto was already at Dustless's throat. Oh my, is this how the Spirit King Palace treats its guests? Completely ignoring their cold gazes, Dustless faintly glanced at the Shudora thousand-handed Maru. Pervert with a belly full of evil tricks. Seemingly having sensed Dustless's gaze, Shudora thousand-hand Maru snorted softly. Hearing this, Dustless smiled awkwardly, opened his mouth and said straightforwardly, If you know what's good for you, hurry up and get out of my way. To tell you the truth, I came here for Spirit King. Like a stone stirring up 1,000 ripples, These words immediately attracted 5 pairs of angry eyes. All the members of Team Zero looked at Wu Chen with rage. You really don't want to give up. It was a mistake to let you out. A soldier of Hyodo Division said with hatred. His whole body was overflowing with cold light, and his shiny bald head was covered with a layer of cold air. Have you forgotten about the seal I placed on your body before? You've got guts. A Watongxing reminded, indicating Dustless not to act rashly. That kind of thing? Do you think it's useful? Do you think I will be afraid? If I was really afraid of Team Zero, do you think I would dare to come? Dustless sneered contemptuously, and his left eye was swallowed by Rinsei Sharingan, and a sudden repulsive force erupted from his body. Shinra Tensei. Caught off guard, the 5 people were easily bounced back. Get out of my way. Those who block me will die. Looking at the giant palace in front of him, Dustless stepped forward. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. 5 figures flashed together, like an iron wall in front of Dustless, blocking his way. A soldier of Hyodo Division picked up his Zanpakuto and wrote a giant seal, word out of thin air. A transparent barrier suddenly isolated the Spirit King Palace. Good ability. Seeing this, Dustless nodded and praised. Although so, his tone was extremely frivolous. Obviously he didn't take it to heart. We have fought before. You are not my opponent. Let me go. Don't force me to kill. Dustless's casual expression disappeared, and his murderous intent was revealed. The temperature of the space within 100 feet dropped rapidly, and his whole body was filled with dangerous fluctuations. The existence of Team Zero is to protect Spirit King. If Spirit King is dead, do you think there is any meaning for us to exist? A soldier of Hyodo Division didn't back down. He held his Zanpakuto in his hand, and not only him, but the other 4 captains also did the same. Even you want to resist me? Dustless's cold eyes splashed some ripples. He looked at Shoutoro Thousand Hand Maru and said, I will say it for the last time. I am not killing Spirit King. I am making him a part of my body. This way, I will become the new Spirit King, and Team Zero will also be liberated. You can do your own thing, no need. No. Shaking his head like a rattledrum, a soldier of Hyodo Division was extremely stubborn. Don't talk nonsense. If you want to hurt Spirit King, you have to step over all of our bodies. The members of Team Zero were all determined. Humph! Dustless's murderous intent skyrocketed, and when he was about to use his eye power, he suddenly stopped and took out the star badge that belonged to Quincy. With a fierce smile on his face, he could use this opportunity to test Old Man Yamamoto's unique skill, Zenka no Tachi. Chapter 1188. How powerful is Zenka no Tachi? No one knew, and even if they did, they would be sent to the underworld by Yamamoto. But one thing is for sure, it's a weapon that can destroy the world. Because of its power, Yamamoto only used it once in thousands of years against Yawatch. This temperature? It's Zenka no Tachi. The members of Team Zero widened their eyes. Obviously, they are no stranger to Zenka no Tachi. I plan to take away the ability of the captain's Zanpakuto. Because of that, the captain was easily killed by Aizen Sosuke's Kyoka Suigetsu. So it was you who killed Yuan Lu Sai, you despicable bastard. The members of the Zero Squad glared at Wu Chen, glaring at him fiercely. I'm already dead. Even if you kill me, it's useless, not to mention that you want to skin me alive. Instead of reminiscing about head Captain Yamamoto, why don't you think about how you're going to deal with me, who has Zenka no Tachi? Wu Chen chuckled and shouted at the same time. Everything turned to ashes, Ryujin Jaka no Tachi. After saying that, a Tachi wrapped in flames appeared in Dustless's hand. The moment it appeared, the temperature of the whole world rose. Everyone couldn't help but feel despair. They were terrified of Dustless's strength. This monster can fight all the Shinigami without Zenka no Tachi. Now he's like a tiger with wings. No one in the world can be his opponent. Everyone, please don't forget the responsibility of Team Zero. Sensing Wu Chen's apocalyptic aura, a soldier from the War Master Division had no choice but to raise his voice. In particular, the relationship between Wu Chen and Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru and Saya So Tongsai made him daydream. Thousand Miles Heaven Palm. The enormous hand swept out rapidly, grabbing towards Dustless's entire person. Naive. Seeing this, Dustless didn't dodge. His body didn't show any signs of elementalization. He wanted to test the power of Zenka no Tachi. Dustless's surroundings were covered in flames. Fire rejection. The incoming spiritual pressure was instantly destroyed. Before it could even touch Dustless's body, it was dismembered and fused with the scorching heat. Damn it, this power, and this move is definitely flowing fire edge. Wang Yu of Ermiwu, who was known as the Saber God, said with a pale face. He really couldn't understand why the heavens were so biased towards Dustless. Could he be God's illegitimate child? Wang Yu wasn't the only one who had such a strange idea. Everyone in Team Zero had the same thought. Otherwise, how could Dustless possess so many heaven-defying abilities and a heaven-defying cheat like Ryujin Jaka? There was no doubt that God was an illegitimate child. Buzz buzz buzz. The blade of the Zanpakuto emitted a dazzling brilliance, and the endless flames began to surge, and an unprecedented heat could be felt from 100 feet away. It was as if he had been thrown into a steamer, and the entire world was scorching hot. As expected of the strongest fire element Zanpakuto, this power, if I didn't have the Jubi's characteristic to regenerate, I would have to be extremely careful when facing Captain Yamamoto. He's only one person, but there are 5 of us. We have the advantage in numbers. Don't panic, let's besiege him together. At this moment, a soldier from the Hattori division shouted. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The 5 members of Team Zero divided into 5 groups and attacked from 5 directions. Their speed was extremely fast, and their attacks were extremely fierce. 2 fists can't beat 4 hands. We 5 against you. What qualifications do you have to fight with us? A soldier from the Hattori division shouted loudly. 2 fists can't beat 4 hands? That's true, but that's effective for ordinary people. This iron principle doesn't work for me. Wu Chen's line of sight suddenly moved to the toilet. Wu Chen's lips curled up into a cruel smile. The soldiers of the War Master's department who were rushing over could be seen clearly. Soldier from the Hattori division. Have you ever been hit by your own move? Dustless smiled creepily, and his strange Sharingan turned, as if he could see the moves of the soldier from the Hattori division in an instant. Using my own move to attack myself? If you can do it, I will immediately bow down to you. A soldier from the Hattori division sneered, and his face was full of disbelief. The other members of Team Zero were also disdainful. If he could imitate their moves with just a casual glance, it would be too much. Is that so? Dustless ignored their disapproving expressions, and suddenly raised his palm, and a huge wave of energy flew out. Then I welcome you to be one of my subordinates, Hattori Division's first soldier, 1,000 Miles Heaven Palm. The same big hand that the first soldier from the Hattori Division used before flew out, and the sharp edge of the hand caught the soldier in an instant, and then it clenched fiercely. Crack crack crack. The sound of a ghost head cracking could be heard, and a large amount of blood slowly dripped down, and the soldier was easily crushed into minced meat. In front of this pair of eyes, do you really think you have the power to resist? Don't be so self-righteous and laugh at me. The deafening arrogant laughter resounded in the Spirit King Palace, and the members of Team Zero were shocked speechless. The first soldier from the Hattori division was the leader of Team Zero, and he was killed so easily. Hattori division's first soldier, Wang Yu from Momiya, was the first to come over, and then he was surprised to find that the minced meat on the ground had reformed, and he was revived again. What a troublesome ability! Dustless saw this scene, and couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. You can't kill me. The first soldier from the Hattori division smiled confidently, and then he looked at the 5-color city eagerly, hoping to see Dustless's defeated face. But he was destined to be disappointed. Although your resurrection ability is heaven-defying, it is not invincible, and you need to borrow the strength of others to revive. I just need to kill everyone, and you think you can still revive? Benkai, Remnant Flame Tachi. Chapter 1189. The fire wave at the tip of the blade was restrained, as if someone had poured a basin of cold water on it, and all of it evaporated. The tip of the blade only emitted a wisp of hot steam, and the blade also changed. It was unexpectedly scorched. At the same time, the remaining water in the atmosphere gradually evaporated until nothing was left. The special space, the whole world began to collapse. Most of the white buildings in the Spirit King Palace started to crack. It can even be solved. The members of Team Zero were stunned. Even with the temperament of Soldier Division's first soldier, he was stunned. There was only one thought in his mind: Shinigami is finished. The terror of Zenka no Tachi was more useful to him than anyone else. Diet Black Ichigo. Sensing that the water in the atmosphere was gradually evaporating, Soldier Division's first soldier didn't hesitate to release Zanpakuto. Only in this way could he barely regain some of his shattered confidence. The other members of Team Zero were no exception. They looked at each other and launched more ferocious attacks on Dustless. Edo 90 Black Coffin. The Ryatsu in his body surged. Sayako Kiryu was the first to use his ultimate move. Hado 90's edge swallowed Dustless from all directions. A mere Hado is nothing. With an arrogant smile on his face, he gently raised Zenka no Tachi and waved it gently. All the incoming attacks collapsed. Zenka no Tachi West. Waning sun prison clothes. A terrifyingly high temperature rose from Wu Chen's body and enveloped his entire body. In the face of the black light that was attacking him from all directions, he merely glanced at it and ignored it. Without any defense, the black light was unstoppable. The moment it touched Dustless, they thought they could kill him. Who would have thought that the black coffin would turn into ashes in an instant? It was directly evaporated by the high temperature of 15 million degrees. Do you still have a chance of winning in my state? It's harder to get close to me, Wu Chen, who was wearing a Ryatsu coat, said. His words were full of contempt. The strength of Team Zero was just like that. They were just paper tigers. When you think they are strong, they are naturally strong. When you think they are weak, they are naturally weak. You bastard. The first soldier's face turned green. His thick beard trembled. It was clear that he was furious. This was an undeniable fact. Normal attacks would evaporate if they got close to Dustless, not to mention attacking him. That's right, although this guy is currently invincible, he's not a flawless existence. A thought flashed through his mind, and a soldier from the Weapon Master Division suddenly laughed sinisterly, looking extremely sinister. What is this old baldy planning now? Dustless frowned and asked in confusion. He had been secretly observing every move of the soldiers in the War Master's department. Even the slightest change could not escape his eyes. Dustless saw the subtle changes in her expression just now. I don't care what schemes you have. In front of absolute strength, everything is futile. Thinking of his current strength, Dustless laughed it off. This was his biggest capital. There was nothing to be afraid of. Team Zero and Spirit King were no exception. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. He raised his Dustless remnant fire Tachi high in the air. After seeing who attacked him, he noticed the Zanpakuto. Looking closely, Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru was controlling her countless bony arms to sweep over. The number was dense. Each bony arm contained a cold light. There was some liquid in front of it, which looked like venom. Huff! Dustless sighed slightly. He found that he couldn't kill this woman. Instead, he felt guilty. He took her chastity by force and used the space coordinates in her body to successfully invade Spirit King Palace. Even if he wanted to kill her, he couldn't raise the butcher's knife. Immediately, he shook his head secretly and threw out 6 rays of light. Bakuto number 61, 6-rod light prison. Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru's attack was stopped. She struggled to move her body but couldn't move. She suddenly found that this 6-rod light prison, that could be easily broken, was particularly difficult to deal with at this moment. Bastard, let go of me if you dare. Shidoro Senjumaru, who did not appreciate Wu Chen's kindness, pointed at Wu Chen and scolded. Get out of here if you are afraid of death. The Spirit King Palace is not a place for people like you to profane. I can't profane? Then who can profane it? Wait for Yuri Habak to profane it? Dustless asked calmly. This sentence made Shidoro Thousand Hand Maru speechless. Finally, it's here. At this time, Wang Yu's joyful laughter came. Dustless turned his head and waved his hand. Directly, he took out a sheathless Zanpakuto from the container filled with mysterious liquid. The body of the Zanpakuto was cold. It was slender and beautiful. It was quite extraordinary. My nickname is Sword God. This Zanpakuto is called Scabbard. Because it is too sharp, there is no suitable scabbard for it. You've been talking nonsense for a long time. What do you want to say? Wu Chen said impatiently with a touch of annoyance in his tone. After being interrupted by Dustless, Wang Yu didn't get angry. He just moved his spiritual pressure and instantly appeared in front of Dustless. The wind of the Zanpakuto swept towards Dustless' face. What I want to say is, there is nothing in front of Scabbard that can't be cut. Even Genryusai's Zanpakuto Tachi is no exception. Chapter 1190. What I want to say is, there is nothing that can't be cut. Even Genryusai's Zanka no Tachi is no exception. The moment his voice fell, the Zanpakuto released a cold light and stabbed towards Dustless's eyes. Clang! In the blink of an eye, there was a loud roar. Wang Yu's arm that was holding the Zanpakuto trembled, and suddenly found that something blocked his attack. It doesn't matter if you can destroy Captain Yamamoto's Zanpakuto. But please be clear about one thing. I am not Captain Yamamoto. Dustless spat out cold air from his dry mouth, looked up and saw that his left arm was covered with armament haki, and he grabbed the incoming black Zanpakuto with his bare hand. All the members of Team Zero were stunned, including Shiradora Senjumaru. Even First Soldier was no exception. He didn't doubt Nimiya Wang Yu's sword-making skills at all. When this indestructible Zanpakuto was first made, Nimiya Wang Yu even bragged to them that it could easily cut a Shinigami in half. But now it was caught by Dustless with his bare hand. Get lost. With a whisper, his left eye quickly turned into Tensigen, and a majestic repulsion erupted from the palm of his hand. Bang bang bang. Under the attack of the repulsion, Nimiya disappeared in an instant. A soldier from the War Master's division hurriedly glanced at the others. The members of Squad Zero were puzzled, but they nodded and attacked Wu Chen ferociously in unison. However, Dustless was wearing the Broken Sun prison clothes, so they used Hades to attack Dustless, and it seemed that they wanted to delay time. The members of Team Zero were also afraid to get close to Dustless. The temperature of 15 million degrees was no joke. It was enough to melt and evaporate a person in an instant. Kirin Temple's Tensigen Lang Yu raised his palm, and the Ryatsu floated, and a majestic dragon head appeared, roaring majestically. Third of Hades' Iron Wind Kill. Whiz whiz whiz. Suddenly, a violent gust of wind blew towards them. The entire Spirit King Palace was shaking. Many of the palaces floating in the void were shaking as if they were about to collapse. Not only that, the Broken Sun prison robe that enveloped Dustless's body was also blown away by the violent hurricane. Li Padao? Hearing this, Dustless's eyes flashed with doubt. Looking at the dragon head in Qilin Temple's Tian Shurlong's hand, astonishment appeared in his eyes. This Li Padao's essence was above Padao. Of course, it didn't mean that he was stronger than Padao. It only represented the identity of Team Zero. Petty tricks. Dustless fearlessly faced the oncoming hurricane. He walked forward courageously. This hurricane was extremely terrifying. It was as sharp as a blade. Wherever it passed, deep cracks would appear. Raising his right arm coldly, a huge flash of light appeared and locked onto Wang Yu. Dao Breaker 88, Flying Dragon Strikes Thief, Sky-Shaking Lightning Bubble. An incomparably thick golden light whizzed out. It was like an unparalleled golden spear piercing towards Wang Yu. The sky that it swept past was distorted. This guy's attainment in Dao Breaker is so deep. The 88th Dao Breaker can actually display a power that surpasses the 90th Dao Breaker. Qilin Temple's Tian Shurlang exclaimed. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. At the critical moment, a black shadow blocked in front of Qilin Temple's Tian Shurlang. He directly used his thick brush and Zanpakuto to write a huge seal, word towards the sky. Boom boom boom. The flash of light blasted onto the invisible barrier, and the sharpness was immediately restrained. This damn bald monk is really troublesome. Such a convenient ability actually fell on his head. Sometimes God is really blind. Dustless couldn't help but curse in his heart. The ability of Soldier Division's first soldier was really too convenient. However, this was just the beginning. What happened next was even more incredible. Soldier Division's first soldier wrote the word, hide, on Qilin Temple's Tian Shirlang, and his whole person disappeared. Dustless released his majestic perception and carefully observed the changes around him, but found that even Qilin Temple's Tian Shirlang's spiritual pressure did not remain. It was as if he had died completely. Using observation hockey, there was no trace of him. Don't waste your effort. This is one of my abilities. There is no need to be surprised. The Spirit King Palace has existed in the world for countless years. If it could be defeated so easily by you, it might have been trampled to the ground thousands of years ago. A soldier from the War Master's division said calmly. He was extremely confident in his own abilities, as if everything was under his control. Bang bang bang. A powerful force came from the left side without warning. Dustless, who didn't feel it, was hit hard. His abdomen caved in, and he groaned in pain. He was instantly hit and slammed into the distant wall, creating a big hole full of cracks. I didn't feel it at all? Dustless was stunned. He was sure that the person who attacked him was Qilin Temple's Tian Shirlang, but he didn't feel it at all. The affairs of the world are unpredictable. I have challenged countless experts before. I didn't expect that I would stumble here. If I remember correctly, this is the first time in my life that I have been sent flying by a kick. Dustless, who stood up again, was in perfect condition. Carelessness can happen once, but it can't happen a second time. Good luck can't always accompany you. Dustless secretly used the Glint Fruit's elemental transformation ability. He had just suffered a small loss because of his carelessness, but such a good opportunity will never happen a second time. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.